We're now live on YouTube and there's Commissioner Hauser.
Oops.
Good.
Laura says we've still got a couple folks that are on their way joining. Oh, and we've got, yep, okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the June Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting. Laura, if you are on, do you mind doing the roll call?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see Adams yet, but did I miss her? Adams?
I just let her in.
Oh, there she is. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. Blecka,
Present.
Bray,
Yes.
Garcia,
Present and accounted for.
Haskett,
Here.
Hauser,
See.
McDaniel,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Vardy,
Present.
Vigil,
I see his name.
Yeah, I do too. He's unmuted.
he's
I'm trying to speak, but evidently nothing's going through.
There we go. We
There
got
you
you
are.
Thank you.
Got it? Okay.
Chair Zimmerman,
here.
you are ready with the full quorum.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone.
Sorry.
We had a
Hello.
great,
Commissioner Adams, I missed the first since it's alphabetical order, so I just want to let you know that I am on the call and present. Thank you. Good morning.
thank you. I think Laura and Dion did present for you because you were getting let in as they were calling your name. So thank you. We got you. Great discussion yesterday, everyone. Thanks so much. I think the the operational plan presentation, really appreciate all the hard work on that and all the feedback and ongoing discussion. So great conversation yesterday, and big thank you to Emily Orbanik for being willing to bump to this morning. And if Emily, if you're on, we'll start with the GOCO update.
Great. Thanks, Madam Chair. Let's see. Before I jump into the GOCO update, I did want to echo all of the well wishes for Commissioner Zimmerman, Commissioner Bray, and Commissioner Vigil. I've had the privilege of working alongside you for the past 6 years and have learned so much from each of you, and certainly hope that Robert's comments are true, that this is just so long for now. So it's been a pleasure. And I did, in the spirit of our joint meeting, we have a couple of GOCO board members on the call again this morning. Mina Liebert from Colorado Springs and Pam Dennehy from La Junta. So thank you, ladies, for being on. And I believe in our collective desire to all be together celebrating in Trinidad today. All of the pictures that you'll see in my presentation are of Fisher's Peak. And they come to us courtesy of the Nature Conservancy and photographer Cameron Davidson. So yeah, and hope to be down there in person sooner rather than later. But since we're not, you'll see some pretty pictures today. I wanted to thank all of the CPW staff who participated in our board meeting yesterday, particularly Director Prenslow, Jody Kennedy, Dan Zimmermer, and Justin Ryder. We had some fantastic conversations. So as was mentioned, I'm trying to start clicking through my PowerPoint and it's not going here.
Monkey.
1 second.
Emily, we were seeing your screen before.
I stopped sharing because I couldn't click through.
Oh, it wasn't advancing.
Yeah.
Huh. There we go.
Try, Emily, try, yeah, from the beginning,
Okay.
over there. Yeah, there you
Well, as we talked about yesterday, and many of you heard or saw virtually, the GOCO board adopted our 2020 strategic plan. So that was a huge, huge milestone, over 18 months in the making, closer to 2 years. And we're still excited to have made it to this point, but certainly recognize that the hard work is still in front of us. I'm not going to go into the plan details like I did last month. All of the commissioners and leadership team received the plan as a Word doc to redline. And I want to thank everybody who gave us feedback and suggestions. As a staff at GOCO, we took those comments very seriously and changed language accordingly. So we have a big year in front of us at GOCO. This was intended to be a transition year for us, working into a new program portfolio aligned with the strategic plan. As I mentioned in May, we are repositioning all of our competitive funding for the upcoming fiscal year to a COVID response and community resiliency through a community resiliency lens. And that's approximately $15 million in our open space and local government quadrants. We plan to have more frequent committee meetings over the summer and to move that money more expeditiously for needs that are on the ground right now, along with having recommendations to our board at the winter, spring, and summer meetings. Our conversations with CPW over the next 6 months will greatly inform our 5-year spending plan that is built out alongside of the strategic plan. CPW and the outdoor community are going to emerge in this post-corona world into a very different reality, especially fiscally. And it's going to be incumbent upon all of us, including CPW and GOCO, to lean into partnerships and programs that gain efficiencies. So we're really looking forward to understanding the agency's highest priorities and building out our spending plan that reflects those and anticipates them over the next five years and potentially beyond, particularly in the Centennial program. We had a really robust conversation yesterday with the director, Jody and Dan, about the statewide partnership model. And those efforts certainly dovetail with our strategic priorities, and we look forward to supporting those conversations, specifically understanding what type of capacity needs exist at the local level to engage in those conversations. Since I last talked to you, the Restore Awards were announced, and I wanted you all to see the types of projects and the groups that we funded through this effort. We had $2.5 million available in this inaugural round and received requests just under $20 million. We were able to fund 11 projects, really the spectrum of organizations here. And without identifying in the application a specific match, these projects represent over $6 million in work that is going to get done on the ground. I thank all of the funding partners that were involved in this, particularly Pat Tucker and the Habitat Protection Program. One of the initial goals of Restore was to create a space for organizations and entities interested in large landscape restoration work to plug in money and not recreate the wheel. And given the conversation that's been going on now around the Habitat Stamp program, we really look forward to engaging the Habitat Stamp Committee earlier in the process this year to talk about how we can leverage each other's dollars more efficiently. And we will engage other potential funding partners through Restore. Our partners at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation have relationships at the federal level that will likely lead to increased funding. And even though we're in this new virtual reality, cultivating private funding partners is on our to-do list. And our hope is that in the next 3 to 5 years, we can grow this pot of funding to $10 million. As far as the timeline for the second round, we will certainly give partners and folks putting together applications and projects more time this year. We plan on releasing an RFP in late August with reviews in the fall and awards early next year. Director Prenslow mentioned yesterday that the board approved the Directors Innovation Fund. This is a 4-year-old program and has had tremendous benefits, both for staff at CPW, but also for GOCO. We've learned just an amazing amount of what CPW deals with on a day-to-day basis that we don't necessarily think about all the time at GOCO. So it's been a tremendous learning opportunity for GOCO staff and board. We received 16 projects this year requesting just under $280,000 and are able to fund 10 of those to the tune of $150,000. And this year's slate of projects is really, you know, the spectrum of work that CPW does. There's projects that are designed to attract new user groups to state parks, like the hammock camping project at Rifle Gap and the backcountry campsites at Mueller State Park. There's compelling projects that showcase CPW's tremendous efforts to manage the bear populations in Colorado. Director Prenslow pointed out the trash cans up in Steamboat. We're also funding bear collars around Glenwood. And there's projects in here that elevate leave no trace principles and cultivate a stewardship ethic for CPW users. And I want to thank all CPW staff that applied to this program. This program is successful because of their amazing ideas across the state and those that helped review. And Director Prenslow for really taking an interest at a deeper level in this program and his knowledge, understanding priorities across the state. I think that this is a tremendous slate of projects and excited to work with the director moving forward. So finally, these are the big priorities and mile markers for GOCO over the next 6 to 12 months, but I really just wanted to sneak in another picture of Fisher's Peak here. So with that, I will open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. And thank you for all the amazing pictures. We all really wish we were there right now and getting to hike in that area as well. It's one of these days. And thanks so much for the attention to the Directors Fund. I think that obviously is an incredible program and Director Prenslow is very well suited to engage in all those projects. So thanks for the update there. Any questions, discussion for Emily? Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for all the work you're doing over there. Just quick on the Restore Fund. You noted that we continued the funding again for next year. And as you know, I am pushing for not only continuing it in the future, but increasing the annual amount for that program. So I would ask for the support of my fellow commissioners here and other GOCO board members to try and make that happen. It's just an incredible program, and of course, support of CPW staff, but it's a great program and I would like to see it increase. So thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Vigil.
Thank you. Emily, I'm sorry I didn't get your PowerPoint, so I didn't see the pretty pictures, but I'm looking out the window at Fisher's Peak from my house right now, so I see it every day.
You will get it, Commissioner. Similar to Justin's presentation yesterday, I didn't want to move ahead of the board and release a PowerPoint that said they approved the strategic plan before they did. So,
well, that's okay. But I want to thank you and GOCO for the help on acquiring the Crazy French Ranch. It's a gem of a project, and hopefully it'll be a real success in for the agency. I think it was needed down here because our parks are just bombarded. So one more place is going to be really positive and a real benefit for the economy of Los Animas County. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner.
And Commissioner Vihil, thank you as well individually for everything you've done on this project. It doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you. You've been a true leader and working behind the scenes and really bringing this project forward. Commissioner Hauser.
Yeah, I just want to underscore a couple things, and I would maybe echo the legacy of Jim Vihil and what an amazing thing to have happen. And just to also recognize, Charlie and I were part of the meeting yesterday, and we've got a couple of the GOCO board members on. I mean, it was a big meeting, strategic plan. I mean, we operating, budget. I mean, it was just, there was a lot packed in there. But I do want to underscore the opportunity that the GOCO board and the GOCO staff took to be responsive to the COVID situation and to release some funds that were sort of designed to help local communities, particularly shovel-ready projects, things like that. So we had a lot of discussion around that, and it was just so that it doesn't go sort of noticed. Maybe Emily can talk a little bit more about that strategy, and it was, I think, suggested 2 months ago, and I think we activated pretty quickly. So know that was part of it as well.
Certainly. Thank you, Commissioner Hauser. We are putting together a framework for what this COVID response is going to look like, and we're going to have a committee, hopefully of the whole, on June 29th to really dive into those details. We've been spending a lot of time listening and learning from other funders, from national foundations all the way to community foundations, to understand best practices and approaches to creating programs like this, but also just understanding how we can, as a funder, streamline the way that we've always done things to be responsive to folks on the ground, asking questions, asking only for what we need, being more flexible on match, and really taking the themes that we've built into our strategic plan around community-driven projects and being a responsive and dynamic funder, and test driving them in this year for COVID relief. So yeah, we're looking forward to learning through this process as well. And I do want to mention, this is our competitive dollars, local government and open space, and CPW is an eligible entity. So, there's opportunities for conversations here related to CPW's COVID needs. So we look forward to having those.
Thank you, Commissioner Hauser and Emily. Thank you for the update on that. I think that's an incredible program. So well done. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about, and Commissioner Hauser, thank you for going back to what we did yesterday, but it dawned on me that we also approved a 5-year spending plan, and in there is the Centennial Fund. And so maybe, Emily, you could just touch on that. But we talked about Fisher's Peak. That was a lot of money. CPW, GOCO, everybody. And if we want to be able to do things like Fisher Peak again someday down the road, program like our Centennial is very important. So maybe, Emily, if you could just touch on that briefly.
Thanks, Charlie. Yes, one of the biggest things on the to-do list is further conversations with CPW over the next 6 months leading up to December to talk about CPW's priorities and understanding how we can best support them through our spending plan, particularly the Centennial program. And as a number of you know, we pulled together a think tank group of CPW staff from all across the state at the beginning of this year to talk through our initial thinking around this program and understand what some of CPW's large priorities and potential ideas are out there. We want to create funding opportunities to achieve big things for the agency, recognizing that an annual budget cycle might not always be conducive to opportunities like Fisher's Peak when they arrive. So I know that there's priorities in all 4 regions. I know that Justin loves when I go out and talk to all of the regional managers to understand what those are. But we do want to have really authentic and transparent conversations with the agency and the regions to understand those priorities so we can build out our 5-year spending plan to achieve those. And the Centennial program is designed for those big dollar opportunities.
Thank you.
The amount of that, just so people know, is that in the 5-year budget for GOCO alone, at this point is $50 million. 25 million out of open space and 25 million out of local government. So when we say big dollars, we're talking real big dollars.
Mo Siegel suggested we talk to Ralph Lauren about his ranch near Ouray. So that's at least been pinned as the big legacy century project.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing more about maybe a field trip to that area and on the way to Commissioner Bray's ranch. There we go. See, it's all coming together. Any other questions or discussion for Emily? Great. Thank you. Let's jump into our herd management plans. As you heard Reed update yesterday, it sounds like the herd management plan subcommittee did get a chance to meet. So we'll look forward to hearing from them, you know, in the future as some of those things come together. Just another quick bit of history here. If you recall, we have in the past, we've talked about what can we do. These herd management plans are, you know, years in the making. They are incredible wealth of information. The plans are many, many pages long. And because we have so many of them to get through over the next year or two, we've talked in the past about how can we, you know, condense these so that we can be more efficient in getting through all of these herd management plans, hear them and get them approved. And so as you see, we've done the pre-recorded presentation, and in the agenda, you have links to both the plan and the presentation. I think everyone has seen those. So with that, we'll just jump into Alan Vitt to go first on the D32 Trinidad Deer Herd Management Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Alan Vitt. I am the terrestrial biologist out of Pueblo, and I'm the one that wrote the D32 plan. If you have any questions, I'm prepared to answer any of those.
Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Behill.
Alan, thank you for the plan. I enjoyed reading it, and it's really an extension, so it's not anything new. But I do have a couple of questions, Alan. The first one is the Habitat Partnership Program down the Sangre de Cristo HPP talked about a couple of things, and so did the local. When you had the local meeting in Trinidad, one of the things that came up was the possibility of private landowners receiving incentives for youth hunting opportunities. And that question is probably the one I hear the most down in my region. Is there's no place for young kids to go hunting. Is that a possibility? I know at one time we had the big game access program, and that fell by the wayside when we had to have the 10 million taken out of our budget. So is there any conversation on doing that again?
Yes, sir. Actually, we have several opportunities with the Big Game Access Program. It's not in your area because we have not found any landowners that are willing to open up their properties to everyone at that time. But we do have big game access programs farther east tied to our small game access program. And there are some opportunities for young individuals to hunt on a couple of our properties out there. We have a youth only turkey license on one of our Ranching for Wildlife properties, the Twin Peaks Ranching for Wildlife property. And we also have a youth only bull tag on the Tercio property, and on the Bosque del Oso State Wildlife Area, we have 2 youth only bull tags. So there are a couple opportunities, but you are correct. We do need to expand those types of programs.
Yeah, I would think somebody like Bobby Hill would be open to youth hunting on the Hill Ranch, and it's a large property.
That is a possibility. I'll bring it up with Bob Holder down there and with our staff, and we'll see what we can have some further those discussions.
Okay, the other question that I had was the HPP committee talked about doing some work on private lands to improve quality and quantity of the habitat. Are there any specific projects, and you don't have to go through them now, but maybe you could email me later when I'm an ex-commissioner, just so I know about them, or I could get a hold of the HPP committee folks myself, I guess. But I'd appreciate if you'd let me know exactly what they're doing and where they're doing it.
Okay, well, I can give a couple projects right off the top, and then I'll do the research later. One of the projects that we've done is actually on Bobby Hill's property, where we have funded a bobcat to do tree removal that is encroaching into the meadows down there. We have also done some water projects in GMU 85, where we have made available a spring box and improved water availability. But I'll look into other ones and get that list to you.
I would really appreciate that, because that's key. And going on from that now, the one thing that I really was happy about the herd management plan is the statements made that the deer population appears to be increasing. And as I told Julie Stiver, I could concur with that completely. I have seen more mule deer this year, last year, the last 2 or 3 years than I had seen in the last 20 years. So they are increasing, and it's great to see that.
Yes,
so
sir.
Thank you for the plan.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Commissioner Vigil. Thanks, Alan. We have 2 more questions. Commissioner McDaniel.
Hello. A couple of quick questions for you. One, well, I'll start with a comment, which is really kind of a question too on overall herd management plans. In the past, I've seen presented to us that it starts with, in that particular HMP, what will the habitat sustain for the herd? And for example, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was up by Vail or something. It said last year, you know, the possible sustainment herd level was 4,000, but based on, you know, the various factors, the objective was 2,500. I don't see that consistently in the plans. It would be great to see if that is possible. The second thing, and some of the HMPs talk about whether the herd is being managed for quality versus opportunity or a mix of both, but not all the plans say that. So that would be another consistency that would make it easier to understand the target objective based on whether it's quality, opportunity, or both. Specifically with regards to the Trinidad plan, I wanted to make sure I understood the the likely outcome. The herd under objective has a low incidence of CWD, and the overall feedback from landowners and hunters was no change. But based on our CWD objective and so forth, is there an expectation then that we would likely increase buck tags in response to that and lower doe tags because we are under objective?
As mentioned in the plan, we have not had any doe licenses in this DAU for approximately 10 years, other than game damage tags, and I believe about 50 to 75 around the town of La Vida Cachara that are for urban deer management. So we do not have any plans to increase doe licenses. Since this is a reauthorization, we are not planning on making sweeping changes. The incidence of CWD is less than 1%, so there's no need to make management changes because of CWD at this time. We're going to do another mandatory test in, I believe, 3 years. So once we get those numbers back, then we'll reevaluate the CWD management strategy.
So we don't believe the amount of game damage or other tags that we are handing out for does really can help us in terms of reaching our target objective on the herd.
You know,
I'm
sorry, sir.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That level of female harvest is very minimal. I don't think there's more than 50 does across that entire DAU that are harvested with those tags.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner McDaniel and Alan. Commissioner Adams.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this presentation. And what I have to, my comments are global across all of the herd management plans. One, I appreciate the task force meeting that we had yesterday. I'm really excited about what was shared by our biologists and Reed Shop. So just wanted to make that comment. But specific to the herd management plans, I've heard, I really appreciated what Commissioner Vigil said about young hunters and engaging young hunters. I also want to bring to the table issues again around making sure that we are creating safe environments for all hunters. And as an emerging hunter, I've spoken about this with the backcountry hunters and anglers at the Hunting for Sustainability panel that I was on last week. And I also had the opportunity to meet with a group of Black hunters from across the country. And this was the first time I'd met with them, and I'm hoping to meet with them again in the future. But they did share some common themes around safety and feeling safe, particularly on public land. So I'm wondering how CPW can be a leader in identifying, piloting, and programming, designing programming that could potentially support the safety of all hunters coming in. And so, you know, again, I had some conversations with some CPW staff about this. I'm happy to have some further conversations about different ways that we can ensure the safety of all hunters. As I mentioned at the panel at Partners in the Outdoors panel on Hunting for Sustainability, which is an exceptional program by backcountry hunters and anglers, that, you know, Black people are getting harassed by having binoculars right in the field. And so imagine if I had a rifle and I go on private property, I would like to assume that my safety is fine. But the evidence says that that is not always going to be the case. And I can't risk my life. It's Russian roulette. I don't know. You know, and so how can we, as stewards of this private public partnership, to identify ways to either pre-screen or some kind of mechanism where I don't feel like I could just You know, that's the difference between access and the quality of the experience. Yes, we all have access to public land and we can knock on the door and we can call, but the quality of that experience can be different, and as unfortunate as it is. So I just wanted to offer that as something that I would love for us to explore more deeply. And I'm happy to be a thought partner as we find ways to ensure that all hunters feel safe, whether they're on public land, wilderness land, or the private land that we have relationships with landowners. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. And we do still have a few other plans to get through, and then we can, I think at the end of these, we can also have a more global discussion about the herd management plans in general, if that works for others. Let's move on. Alan, thank you. Any other additional thoughts, comments? Nope. Okay. Let's move on to Jonathan Reitz with the Cheyenne Pronghorn Herd Management Plan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director. My name is Jonathan Reitz, and I'm the Area 12 biologist based out of Lamar. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about the Pronghorn Plan.
Thanks, Jonathan. Reitz, not Reitz. I apologize. I just watched your presentation too, where you said your name and it didn't register with me enough.
No worries.
Thank you. And I know you gave us a couple of presentations. So any comments on this one? Commissioner Garcia.
Morning, Jonathan. Thank you for both of these reports. And I just wanted to say, you know, one of the things that we're looking at a lot in our last few meetings is hunter crowding. And I want to thank you and congratulate you for the success that you've had. Great work on all the different approaches you've had to try to control the hunter crowding problem on these pronghorn herd management plans. So hopefully those are things that we can look at and adopting in some of our other management plans outside of pronghorn. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Vigil.
Jonathan, thanks for the two plans. I went through them pretty thoroughly, and I was happy with the Cheyenne Pronghorn herd management plan, and there is an increase in the population objective, and it seems significant, but everybody was fine with that. I mean, the local farmers and ranchers were okay with the increase. The one thing that I looked at in the comments that was really common in complaints was from the landowners is the spread of bindweed. And I don't think there's anything we could possibly do with the spreading of bindweed. I mean, that's just, it's natural. The pronghorn are going to eat the bindweed and they're going to spread it around. But that's the only thing that I've seen that some of the landowners complained about. But that's, I think that's kind of minor. I don't see a real issue. So I think the plan looks great, Jonathan. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you,
Great.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner McDaniel.
I forgot to mention before, Jonathan and everyone, with regards to these plans and the virtual recordings, they're excellent, by the way. Both the detailed plans and the recordings were really great to watch beforehand. Just a quick comment on Cheyenne and Two Buttes. First on Cheyenne, it was a really great discussion of both crowding, game damage, and the herd range. And then on Two Buttes, I appreciated the additional discussion you gave about it being a management, not a modeling strategy with regards to the target herd size. So no questions, just comments, really good plans. I support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, very, very well done. Do you want to, Jonathan, do you want to speak specifically to the Two Buttes pronghorn herd management plan? And are there any questions, comments, discussion around that one?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have a question.
Great, go ahead, Commissioner Vigil.
Or it's a comment, not a question. When I read that plan, I thought there was a typo in it, where you had the expected sex ratio range of 40 to 100. And I thought, wait a minute, how could you have 100 does to $100? It just seemed impossible. But Julie Stiver explained that to me, and I want to thank Julie Stiver, Brett Ackerman for having a conference call with me on these 3 plans from the Southeast Quarter. They did an excellent job of answering all my questions, and that means I don't have a lot of questions now. So kudos to those folks. And again, I'm happy with the Two Buttes plan as I am with the Cheyenne Pronghorn plan.
Just to clarify or expand on what the commissioner was referring to, for the Two Buttes plan, it's a little unusual as far as the expected buck-doe ratio range, and where it goes as high as $100 per 100 does. The reason for that being is that the harvest that we've experienced over the last 10 years, most years we're harvesting about the same number of does as we are bucks. And again, to clarify with that plan, it's a little unusual for a pronghorn herd to have an expected sex ratio range. We don't actually have we're not proposing a sex ratio objective. So it's basically our estimate that sex ratio will fall somewhere within that range. But with this herd management plan, with us not really having really good control on what the harvest is, because all of the licenses that we allocate are not being sold, it kind of behaves somewhat like an over-the-counter unit that way.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Commissioner Beal, did you have additional comments?
No, I just wanted to thank you for that explanation. I think that was good.
I'm going to
For the
take
benefit of the whole.
I'm going to take a minute too to do a special thank you to Commissioner Beal. I know from the staff too. Jim, you've done an amazing job of really digging into these herd management plans, especially in your region, and working with the biologists and the staff. And we've seen, these plans have they've grown and they're just really impressive. And I think you've had a lot to do with that, again, behind the scenes. So thank you for your time and effort and knowledge and expertise there.
You're quite welcome, Madam Chair.
All right, Angelique Curtis, you're up for the Cherokee Park Pronghorn Herd Management Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director. My name is Angelique Curtis. I'm the wildlife biologist out of the Fort Collins office, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on either of the herd management plans.
Great, thank you. And thank you for your presentations. Very well done again. Commissioner Garcia.
Just wanted to thank you for reaching out, and I did not have any questions. Great job. It was a great presentation. Thank you for all of the work you did.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I didn't call you back after our first call because I didn't have any more questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd have to echo Commissioner Garcia's comments. I didn't have any questions, so I was satisfied with the plan. It looked good.
Great, Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you. Again, echo excellent presentations of both Cherokee Park and Laramie River pronghorn herds. One question on both. Do we work with Wyoming Game and Fish? Because both of those talk about herds moving down from Wyoming into Colorado. We're trying to manage the Colorado resident herd, but we have a Wyoming resident herd come in, or non-resident herd, I'll call it, come in. And do we work with them to make sure that, between the two states, you're trying to keep the total herd in balance?
So yes, I work regularly with their biologists up there. We have different strategies than Wyoming on our hunting management, so it's a bit different. And of course, as I've written in the plan, it's dependent on weather, so actual weather moving into Colorado and Wyoming on if they migrate down or not. So I do work with them, but probably not to the extent of what you're thinking as far as how many licenses we put out or not. We just share data as far as what we see on the ground.
Yeah, and I know that's a difficult question with regards to how the different states manage it. And obviously based on what you said in your reports about when weather comes in. So obviously I do support both the plans as they were presented, and would, again, encourage us to do what you're already doing, which is, work with Wyoming as much as possible in terms of managing the herd in total for that region. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it seems like we've talked
Madam
about
Chair-
kind of, oh, go ahead, Commissioner Vehil.
To follow up with Commissioner McDaniel's comments.
Did we lose you, Commissioner Vehil?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We lost Michelle.
Hear you, Jim. I think Chair Zimmerman's having some problems.
And I think this is Marvin, Commissioner McDaniel. I think she was just trying to recognize you, Jim, that it was you speaking. So go ahead.
Okay. I agree with you about the cross-border issue, because we have the same thing with elk in the southern part of the state, going from New Mexico to Colorado back and forth, and we can't control what New Mexico does, and especially in the big private lands like the Vermejo Park. Ted Turner controls that, and my understanding is they kill a lot of cow elk, and that could potentially be hurting our herd down here, but that's getting off the subject. Other than the cross-border thing, it's important for the biologists to speak to their equivalents on the other side of the border. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we get Michelle back?
She's rejoining.
Okay, well, let's move forward to the North Park pronghorn herd management plan.
All right, Madam Chair, Directors, Commissioners, I'm Jeff Yost, the biologist out of Steamboat Springs, and I've got the North Park PH3 pronghorn plan today and the E7 Gore Pass elk herd. I'd be happy to answer questions on either of those plans.
Thank you, Jeff. Charlie? Commissioner Garcia? I'll try to be more formal.
Good morning, Jeff, and thank you. And I'm a Grand Lake person, so I'd love to get together with you sometime up in our part of the state. First question is, I saw that, maybe the first time I've really seen this, that you indicated that one of your problems was roadkill. So
Yeah.
Is there anything we're doing with trying to work with CPW and CDOT for overpasses, underpasses, anything along those lines?
Yeah, in fact, just recently, within the past year, we have initiated working with Wyoming Game and Fish Department, the Colorado Department of Transportation, and Wyoming Department of Transportation on things we could do. And that's in conjunction with Sandridge Energy, the biggest oil producer in North Park currently, because they did have an incident where one of their trucks hit a whole bunch of pronghorn 2 winters ago. And so they came to us and said, is there something we can do? We don't want this happening anymore. So yeah, we've just started that process, looking at things we could do to slow down trucks in certain places. Sandridge is willing to put even speed restrictions on their vehicles when they're going through certain sections that are known to be dangerous for wildlife crossings. And then also with both the Departments of Transportation, trying to figure out places where we could do things, reduce speeds, or start looking at the overpasses, underpasses, that sort of thing. But we're in the initial stages of that. And we're doing that in regards to deer as well, because it's deer and pronghorn both especially near the border between Colorado and Wyoming.
Great, and thank you for both reports, specifically the Gore Pass, because I spent a lot of time over there. And so maybe that's a place we can get together, but good report on both. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and sorry I missed a little bit of discussion, I think, as I dropped off, but hopefully I'm back. And Commissioner McDaniel, thank you again for covering for me. Commissioner Schaefer, I think you have a hand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things indicated in the in that Gore Elk plan is sort of a changing dynamics in regards to overall year-round recreation as well as urban development, and just so many more people on the landscape. Given we've heard this when we were talking about E11 or many other places of sort of changing recreation dynamics. One of my questions around this, and it's not necessarily just particular to this plan, but are there triggers that we are establishing either informally or formally of that would require different management sort of techniques that on that social scale? I understand the declining cow-calf ratios and things like that, but when we're talking about Forest Road 100 being inundated for 6 months out of the year, or just sort of a diminishment of available refugia in the northern portion of the DAU, is there any idea of being able to implement a management change based upon social dynamic metrics, or is that just too fuzzy of a number to put a thumb on?
Well, it's definitely kind of fuzzy for all reasons that you mentioned. And the only real trigger on these plans, I think, is our population objective range. And if these things are affecting our populations enough that we're dropping to the lower end of those objective ranges, then we've got to scale back, obviously, on our license numbers and maybe even set a lower objective. And over time, I mean, we're encouraging people to get outdoors, which we should be, and recreate and do these things, but they have impacts. And as the population in the state grows, as you know, those impacts are just going to keep growing. And I'm not sure that we can sustain some of these herds at the levels we've had. Right now, everything looks fine, but 10, 20 years from now, that may be a different case. There are some things we can do, such as, limits on the number of, at least through CPW, the number of hunters that are out during various seasons, whether, the topic of limiting some of the archery seasons has come up. Right now it's over the counter, that kind of thing. Are we going to get to the point where we limit recreation on the national forests and that's too big of a topic to really get into here. But it may be coming.
Yeah, I think that this particular sort of portion of the conversation, coupled with the roundtables, that at some point this becomes a holistic conversation about not just a prescriptive approach, but also if we have the ability to actually implement adaptive management when it comes to overall recreation use. But I appreciate being called out in the herd management plan, because it is certainly a limiting factor, but it's one where as we all seen this spring, and as was reported by managers yesterday, it's growing at a level which we really weren't anticipating. So I thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Schaefer, for bringing that the recreation impacts up. I know it's something that we talk about a lot, and so I appreciate the attention to it, and of course the attention to it in the plan. Jeff, as I was trying to reconnect and everything, were you opening comments for both the North Park Pronghorn and the Gore Pass elk herd, or was that just on North Park plan?
No, it was for North Park and for the Gore Pass elk, both.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? That's the full list of herd management plans for this for today. I'll make a couple of quick comments. So these are information items. I believe my understanding, and this may change, is that these will go onto consent agenda for approval at a future meeting. Commissioner Hauser, sorry, I just saw your hand.
Sorry, I can wait until you're
okay.
Once you finish up. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And I just want to remind folks, obviously, we have Brian Dreyer on the line. We have Shannon Schaller on the line. So if there's any discussion generally, more global topic about herd management plans, the presentations, this way of bringing them, as you saw, we got through 7 of those pretty quickly. And if, I think we've what 200 to go. So, so just some general commission discussion. I'd like to open up for a couple minutes about these plans. And just one thing to keep in mind, these are herd management plans. They're meant to set objectives. They're meant to help us manage around hunting specifically. So just some sideboards and limitations on what they are and are not. They certainly can inform a lot of things when it comes to, larger messaging. They have a lot of great information, as we talked about at a previous meeting, pulling information from these with regard to, okay, we might have recreation impacts, or we might have development impacts, or we might have wildlife crossing opportunities. I think it's really important to be able to pull those pieces of information and then put those onto a different topic. But I do want to just keep in mind that these plans are meant to manage our objectives and specifically how we manage around hunting in each of these plans. So just keep that in mind. And Brian, Shannon, if anyone has anything else to add, and then I'll go to Commissioner Hauser. Or Reed, of course, as well. I think Reed's on too. Okay, Commissioner Hauser.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to underscore Commissioner McDaniel's comments just about the quality of these presentations and, not letting a good crisis go to waste. If this is something that we might sustain as we sort of come back to some semblance of normal. I loved the flipped classroom model that we could watch these and observe these in advance, and thought they make really good use of our time. So well done. Every one of them was terrific, and just wanted to mostly give kudos to they were very helpful to me, and I sort of listened to all of them. Everybody had kind of a different style, and it gave a good sense across the state. And looking at some of those long-term graphs, I think also helps us sort of understand what progress we've made, where there were dips, the adjustments that were made, and it really does bear out the science. So just mostly kudos to the team, and appreciate the opportunity to do something a little bit different. I suspect it took a lot of time to pull those together, and I thought they were great. And they provide the public access to those as well, in a way that maybe others wouldn't have that if they can't come to a commission meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Hauser. That's great feedback. Brian, I think you had your hand up, and then Commissioner Garcia.
Madam Chair, Director Prenslow, and Commissioners. I just want to thank you guys for the positive feedback. Our folks, we kind of threw them a bit of a curveball here with this one, and they've been really good sports at doing this. They recorded these presentations from their offices or their homes, and I just really appreciate the feedback. And like so many of my colleagues, I do want to thank Commissioner Zimmerman, Commissioner Bray, and Commissioner Vigil for just your participation in the commission, and just kind of relationship over the last many years. And thank you for your service. It's been really great. Had a really amazing day with Commissioner Vigil many years ago, riding around in a truck, having coffee at his house, going out to do some elk capture work. So I really do thank you guys, and certainly hope that we can stay in touch for the future. So, but I do appreciate the great feedback today. And if it's something that you guys want to see, I think it's something we can certainly do and continue on. I think it worked really well on our end.
Great. Well, that's good to hear, Brian. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, I wanted to echo Commissioner Hauser's comments. I really like this. Just for the future, I know I spoke with Commissioner Zimmerman the other day, and I don't think the Herd Management Plan Committee actually met until yesterday morning. And so in the future, first, I would say I semi-volunteered to be on that committee, but there were already too many people on it. So I think I asked to be in reserve. But if it turns out that there is room, I'd love to be part of that. I just thought in terms of the future, because this is such a great idea, and this idea cuts both ways. If we had those videos available further in advance, then, and even in advance of the herd management plan committee meeting, people could contact the host or whoever and talk about these issues before the meeting, which might be helpful to save some time in our commission meetings here. But on the other hand, it's these conversations that we have during the committee meetings that the public is watching. And sometimes that's very helpful as well. So there's a fine balance there. I don't know how much public participation we would get in the herd management plan committee meeting, but just some thoughts about how we might even refine this a little bit more. I think it's great, and all of the presentations were fantastic. And all of the information that we get is very, very, very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you,
Madam
Commissioner.
Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Vehil.
I want to really compliment the entire staff that works on these herd management plans. Over the time I've been on the commission, there's been a great improvement in them. I remember when I was, the first year I was on the commission, they were overwhelming, and my goodness, they've got really good, and I appreciate that. And I hope I haven't been a pest in some of my requests to always include CWD graphs in there, because that's in our deer and elk, that's so critical. Hope we never get them in pronghorn. But thank everybody for your great work on these herd management plans. Thank you.
Great. Reed, did you have any comments on, because I know, obviously in, what was it, January, you gave us the presentation in general about the herd management plans and what staff is doing. Any other additional feedback you're looking for specifically from the commission on any of these?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the feedback we've received today has been very helpful. We were entering into these recorded presentations with a little trepidation to make sure that they worked fine and that they worked well. And just to echo Brian's comments, thank you to the staff who worked on these. This is hours and hours to get these things nailed down correctly. And I'm glad to hear that they've met the commission expectation. So right now, I think the feedback we've received has been excellent and very helpful, in addition to the meeting yesterday morning. And then to Commissioner Garcia's point, Commissioner Bray is leaving the subcommittee, and there may be an opening for Commissioner Garcia on that as well. But thank you all in all. We hope these presentations may be something we can continue into the future, and we're always looking for process improvement as well. So I think we're doing good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Reed. Okay, well, nicely done. We cruised through 7 of those pretty quickly. Let's move on to agenda item 20 to Stacy Corey for the Lathrop State Park Management Plan. And I think I saw Stacy's name on the list, so hopefully you are ready. Hi, I can see you.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners, Director. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna just hop right on and share my PowerPoint. Bear with me one second. Okay, does that look okay to everybody?
Good.
All right. All right, so I'm Stacy Corey. I'm the park manager at Lathrop State Park. And I wanted to talk to you all this morning about our management plan that is in the works. Oops, excuse me. That we wanted to present to you while we were going to be in Trinidad. So we're in the same region and just up the road. So we want to let you know where we're at with our plan and what's coming up, and definitely have you put in comments on it as we work forward with it. And why Lathrop was picked as a plan now is we haven't had a management plan since 2001. And so it was definitely time. And then we've been working a lot with our stewardship section. That they've done several plans for us just in the recent years. We've had a stewardship plan done for us. weed management, forest management, and a cultural survey. So this is a great time to capture that information into one document. So we were honored to be up next on the list of parks that are getting plans. So the purpose of our plan is it serves as our foremost guiding document for Lathrop. The ultimate purpose is balancing the public enjoyment of the park and protection of our resources. It's a framework for setting priorities and direction for managing our park resources. It serves as a guide and policy document for future park staff, other partners, and interested members of the public. It guides the management of our natural, cultural, and recreational resources, identifies park enhancement in opportunities, which I'll talk about in a little bit, including facility upgrades, new park facilities, restoration and rehabilitation projects, and important management initiatives. And it serves as a guide for future park budget allocations and our funding requests. So first I'll start with what we're already known for and what we hope to keep continuing forward. So one of our big draws down at Lathrop is we have 2 lakes, and they both provide 2 completely different types of recreational experiences. And the view that you're seeing of these 2 lakes is from the Hogback Trail. And so it's looking from the north-south, so it's reverse of what you would see on a map. But the one on the left is Martin Lake, where you can take jet skis, go tubing. We have a swim beach there, and kind of the higher motorized sports lake. And then the one on the right is Horseshoe Lake, and that was purchased with federal funds. And so it is specifically developed for wildlife use and recreation only. So it has been purposely kept as a minimally developed, and you can do things like waterfowl hunting. It's a great fishery. We don't allow anything above a wakeless speed on the water, and you can hunt other small game, anything that you can shoot with a shotgun pellet, like turkey, rabbits, coyotes, and so forth. We are also the only state park that has a golf course, and there's a land exchange going on currently that hopefully I'll get to talk to you about soon at another meeting, that the golf course will go to the city, and we'll get our Yucca campground that we operate but don't currently own. But the city does operate this golf course, and so we get the benefit of having it on the park, and our campers can walk right over to it, but the city does the operations of it. And then of course we're known as and for many years just always been an excellent fishery. And Martin Lake has pike, which the lady is holding up in the corner, and then Horseshoe Lake has tiger muskie, so many people will come and sport fish for both of those. Okay, so where we started with this plan, of course, we just talked amongst each other. We brainstormed and looked at what visitors were doing and what the flow of the park, the flow of visitation, and we just brainstormed. And we had the help of policy and planning in our stewardship section with our brainstorming. And of course, we looked at our strategic plan goals, and those plans that I mentioned earlier. We looked through those and make sure we're following the recommendation of those plans. And then we also did a series of surveys last year, and we got on the ground and walked around with paper in our hand and talked to visitors. But our better results came from an online survey that we did last summer into last fall. And we got some good response from those. And we also sent out copies of the survey out to our partners so they could comment as well. And what the results were, what our visitors said, we were very pleased to mostly hear. They said, keep doing what you're doing. And they like the facilities that we have. And I wanted to highlight the top 2. Trail use, pedestrian, walking, hiking, that rated the highest in the survey at 67% of our users. And I want to take this moment to thank Great Outdoors Colorado, Emily, and thank Land and Water Conservation Fund. If you look on the slides on the left, you'll see with the Cuerno Verde Trail, that's a trail that goes around Martin Lake, what the surface used to look like. It was asphalt, and as asphalt does, it was cracked and had potholes. And then in 2018, you'll see on the bottom left, we were funded with a new 3-mile concrete trail. And if you look closer, there's also a natural surface trail to the right of it. So runners could have a softer surface to run on. And we have received really good feedback from our trail, and the usage has gone up immensely in the last 2 years, especially from our locals. And then also fishing came in second as what people do the most on our park. And bird watching and using our swim beach came in third at 33% of our use. And on the right, we had in 2014, we had a major renovation to our swim beach area and also to our boat ramp and what we call Martin Lake picnic area. They're all along the same shoreline, but if you look on the upper right and lower right, you'll see the difference of what people actually had to walk through those weeds, and had a little social trail to get to the swim beach prior to 2014. And then you'll see in 2014, not only is it more user-friendly for bare feet, but also a parking lot was added so people could park right in front of the swim beach area. And then our park, the feedback we get is we're also known for many other family-friendly activities. And just a very recent project that in fact isn't even done yet. On the left, we had a playground up in our campground, and it's partially removed in this slide, but we had the old metal slide. So that tells you kind of how old those facilities were. And so we just got a brand new playground in our campground. And so our public is excited when those can open again. And then also we have a 3-target archery range where we've held classes for kids, and of course people can come in and practice for archery season. And then also other activities that people participate in the park. They bird watching and photography came in very actually behind swimming, 29%, and then a lot of non-motorized boating such as kayaking, stand-up paddle boards, that's increasing. And then we also have what we call a bike library, which an organization in the city of Walsenburg, they donated bikes to us, and you don't even have to rent them. You just come sign a waiver and we loan out bikes for free. So that was called the Live Well and Bike and Pedestrian Committee in Walsenburg that set us up with that. Okay, and now I'd like to move on to what the goals of the plan will be. And when we get this plan out, you'll see that there's many pages of detailed descriptions of the park itself, the facilities, the buildings, our climate, the ecology, flora, fauna, and so forth that's on the park that will have very good description. And then, of course, it will have our goals. And these are in no particular order on these, but we want to maintain that quality fishery and the water recreation that we are known for. We want to improve our property appearance throughout the park through rehabilitation, redevelopment, consistent with our standards of a Colorado State Park and the character specific to our park. And then we also want to provide exceptional customer service and education to allow visitors to have safe and high quality recreational experiences. And just to point out how these slides relate to that, on the left side, you'll see more of the development I was talking about on the Martin Beach area, the Martin shoreline. And on the left photo, you'll see that social trail I was talking about to the swim beach. And then if you look closer, you'll see that we redid the shoreline itself where boats are. Sidewalks had eroded into the water prior to 2014. And so we got those out, got new sidewalk, new shoreline stabilization. And then that same sidewalk is in the picture on the lower right. And that's actually just showing a typical day, typical Saturday at Martin Lake of the use and the type of activities people are doing. Okay, and then some more goals that we have. We are planning for our anticipated future increases and changes in our visitation and changes in recreation trends. So we're looking at who our visitors are, who's coming, are we serving them well, are we providing activities they want to do, and not just putting in what we want to do. And I think that anticipated future increase in visitation is here now. So based on what we've seen this summer. So we are working with that, and that is an old picture on the left of, so that's pre-social distancing days, but that's the area around our swim beach on some days. So we've gone to capacity. So we're working at how, again, we can balance keeping our resources with keeping people safe and recreating. The next goal is to implement this and other plans developed for the park in collaboration with other CPW staff and external partners and internal staff. You all might recognize Miss Carrie Tucker. She's our fish biologist, and I wish I could say that fish was from our park, but she happens to be standing at John Martin, but I got her picture in there. And other partners that we work very closely with, of course, are the Walsenburg Golf Course. The Spanish Peaks Regional Health Center is right across the highway from us. And then our local governments, both in Walsenburg and Levita. And also one other important partnership that we have internally is I had mentioned that Horseshoe Lake property was purchased with federal wildlife funds. So we used to have an MOU with the old parks and old wildlife to keep it non-developed for wildlife use. And so now that we're the same agency, we are now just looking at this park management plan to keep that policy in place and to make sure that that is never developed for the wrong use. And then the final goal is to protect, conserve, and interpret the significant cultural, natural, and historical resources of our park. And again, our stewardship section and Matt Schultz, they've been really helpful of helping us identify where those are and mapping them and interpreting them for us. Okay, and I had talked about enhancements that we want to do on the park. And I'm just going to take a moment on this slide. This is our layout of the park. The purple at the bottom is where Highway 160 runs. So if you're heading west towards Alamosa or Durango, that's the southern end of the park. And then we have 1,544 acres of land. And the purple on the right is the city golf course. So that is going to be removed from the map when the land exchange is done. And another reason I wanted to pull up this map is it's management zones that Matt Schultz designed for us. So we're using these zones to help us know where, if we add facilities or what to keep natural. So the purple is the most developed areas, and the green, natural areas that may have picnic tables in them. Some of them have a couple of parking lots. And then the yellow is outright protection zone. And if you notice, there's a purple right over a yellow in the upper corner, and that is our campground. And then they discovered in the cultural survey that they're prehistoric, or I shouldn't say prehistoric, but a long time ago, people traveling through, they used our rock shelters as campsites. And so we're finding old campsites, old campfire remains from people who traveled through hundreds of years ago. So that's going to be a cultural area that we interpret. Okay, and other enhancements, the public has also said that they would like us to add more ADA access. And one of the places we looked at is to repurpose an area that we had already developed. And this is actually on Horseshoe Lake and right, this area right here used to be a boat ramp and on Horseshoe Lake, but it's too narrow, too shallow. So your boat never quite gets out far enough to unlaunch. So they closed it down, but we said, what can we do with that? And so this isn't on the park yet, but I wanted to show a sample. We have a boat dock for ADA access for kayak and canoe launching that we're going to put in that area. And we've already received funding and have developed sidewalks and ADA parking spaces and picnic tables to put at that area as well. And then the picture I showed you earlier of the people along the shoreline and using all the picnic tables, the upper part is a previous picture, and that is currently under reconstruction right now. We are getting new picnic tables, higher shelters, because people used to actually hit their heads on those shorter ones, and yeah, safer shelters that are coming in August. Okay, and then also the natural resource management is a priority, and we've had some volunteers that have just been amazing in the last few years with removing Russian olives that have really overgrown, especially between the two lakes in a very riparian area. So we're clearing out, making more room for native plants and trees. And also involved with this will be Youth Corps. They've helped keep Russian olives off the Horseshoe Dam and on the west side of Horseshoe. And we've removed thistles and other invasive plants. And we're also following our stewardship plan and forest management plan and weed management plan recommendations for our natural resource management. And then another project coming up that we have received funding for is you're looking at a group. This is a non-electric group campground, and I believe it goes back to the 1960s. And we are getting funding to actually make this a very user-friendly group facility. It's going to go from having those two small picnic shelters to a pavilion and have more tables. As of now, only there's only, I think, 4 to 6 tables in there, but there will be, yeah, covered tables and walkways. And again, we're going to provide the ADA access in this area when we develop it. Okay, and then I talked about trails being very popular. And so, of course, we want to look at how our trails are doing, what we want to upgrade and so forth. And the Hogback Trail I talked about earlier, it's that hillside that you see up here, right back here. This trail will take you up on that hill. And you can overlook the entire park and onto the Spanish Peaks, and it's very beautiful. And we're gonna look at partnering agencies to help us keep erosion from happening on that trail and keep it upgraded and user-friendly. It also has interpretive markers on it, so you can do a self-guided hike with a brochure. And then we have an equestrian trail on the, I'm gonna show this on the map right here. The equestrian trail runs right here, and we're looking at, and it's very short, so not a lot of people with horse trailers come use it. And I take it back, it actually runs this way and comes around. So we're looking at maybe connecting it somehow to where we can use this property up in here. And this northern part right here where my pointer is state land board leased. And we are going to open it up for public comment and your comment of ideas of what to use that property for. But our first thought, of course, is just adding to our trail system since that is so popular. And again, we're going to use our management zone map to help keep the natural areas intact. And then, so finally, our next steps that we're going to do with our plan, we're doing our final reviews on it. Of course, when we get our final draft done, we'd like your comments, and we'll send it out to our partners. And we will also do a public comment portion, and then we will have our final draft and get the approval on it hopefully by the end of this year. And that's all I have on the presentation, but I will gladly take questions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. I love getting these plans. They're always incredibly thorough. I know you put a lot of work into these, so certainly appreciate the update. We do have a couple of questions. Commissioner Adams, you had your hand up and took it down. Do you still? You're on. I think you're on mute, maybe.
I can you hear me now?
Okay, got it.
Wonderful, thank you. I thank you so much, Stacy Curie, for this presentation. You've raised up several questions for me, and first of all, again, I just want to appreciate recognizing the need to strengthen our ADA options, our access for people with disabilities, and just being creative and thoughtful and leading without having to be asked, right? And so I just really wanted to acknowledge and appreciate that. And then it raises other questions, right? Around, so you did that because you saw this as an opportunity and you brought it, and that's, you took that initiative and took that leadership. But it goes back to what I was saying in my opening comments yesterday. As an agency, how are we being intentional around ensuring and increasing access for people with disabilities? And so, you know, what I would love is some kind of report or something that lets us commissioners know and the public know what is the status of our efforts, of our agency's efforts as it relates to state parks. I know, again, I keep bringing up Staunton State Parks because I have family and friends and colleagues who have different ability levels and can only access trails by having a track program. And that program is funded outside of our agency. You know, yesterday we talked about people who have different hearing abilities and the deaf community and how we can be better stewards to that community as well. So again, I'm just wondering, how are we partnering, going back to what Lauren Pruitt talked about yesterday, how are we being intentional about our partnerships? I recognize there are some partnerships at play, but how can we be more comprehensive around that? And then also, what is the status of our current efforts as it relates to ensuring access for specifically people with disabilities? And we'll need to unpack that term, right, because they're not a monolith. And then on top of that, we're considering having special days for young people, young emerging hunters. I would also, again, like to offer and request that we explore opportunities for families and caregivers of people with disabilities to have a day or a weekend or what have you, some kind of mechanism where they can access art without being gawked at and bothered. I've heard this concern explicitly from families and caregivers of people with disabilities, and I want to make sure that they have access, safe access to our parks just like everybody else. So just wanted to offer a thank you and an opportunity for us to strengthen our accessibility and our inclusion. Inclusion is not just Black and brown people, it's also peoples with disabilities and the like. So thank you.
Thank you. And what I heard you say out of that is a report, and that's a great idea, like to keep us all communicating with each other internally, you know, and so I will definitely contribute that as we develop.
Right. And again, I don't want to put in, you know, more, Katie Lanter, I apologize in advance, girl. You know, because again, reporting is hard, but how do we know where we are if we don't know what our starting point is? How do we know we are gaining traction? How do we know if there's gaps? How do we know if there's strengths like the work that you're bringing and doing at Lathrop Park, State Park, if there are other learnings that are happening out, you know, in states, in other state parks, and we really want to bring that information together. And again, how do we empower and center peoples with disabilities in those organizations run by peoples with disabilities to inform and guide, so that we are not thinking what we think is best for them, but rather they have a seat at the decision-making table when we're trying to make sure that we're meeting their needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Stacy. Great presentation. So you are, Lathrop is the first state park in Colorado. Congratulations. So almost 60 years old. So quite a history. And the before and after is amazing. I'd love to see some real before when the park was really old. I'm sure you'll have something in there along with your center. But I was looking, and I was disappointed because I've been trying to get Director Prenslow and Versteeg and people to build more golf courses. And here we are trading a golf course for a campground. So I'm a little saddened by that, but I guess I can still come down there and play. I did have one question in your management plan, and maybe just overall, it would help us with things like Fisher Peak and others. The interaction between small game hunters and your recreational users. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and the issues and solutions maybe?
That's a great question. So right now, the way that that is divided up is there's no hunting allowed between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And so it's a perfect start for dove hunters that want to come right after that Labor Day ends. And so far we've had no issues, but as our visitation is increasing and people are wanting to get out and do more of the, the bird watching and natural based activities, we are going to have to monitor that. But that's kind of, and in the park around November and those times of year, visitation is virtually nothing over there as far as non-hunting. So we're fortunate that way, but it is something to keep monitoring. But yeah, that's how they've done it so far. And does that answer your question?
Oh, Charlie, you're on mute.
Thank you. And no more, but maybe as we start talking more about Fisher's Peak and others, we can reach out to you and I'm sure CPW does already, because sometimes those interactions can be difficult and your timing is one, but there are a lot of other issues that, you've got people out there fishing and people shooting ducks at the same time. Sometimes that can be problematic, but I'm sure it's something, but congratulations, beautiful park and great work that you've done in your redevelopment and with your plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. We will.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Vigil.
Yes. Stacy, first I want to apologize that I haven't been out recently to see all your improvements, and I had planned to do that. When you had the grand opening of the new trail, we had a commission meeting at the same time, so I didn't make it. But I do have a question, and that's, what is the status of the Career Building Academy property that's on the south side of 160?
Ooh, that's a very good question. And Commissioner Vigil, we had when the Corona Verde grand opening happened, we were working with the city at the same time. So it was very hard to get that scheduled. And they offered free ice cream. So I apologize that I had to go that direction over waiting for a different day to open. But yeah, we did a combined grand opening because they had a miniature golf course open on the same day. And so and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that in the presentation, there's actually miniature golf too there. So, yes, anytime you want to come see the trail, I would love to show it to you. But the Career Building Academy, of course, is the former youth camp, which are state buildings owned by Department of Human Services. And they are a piece of this whole land exchange that we're doing, because the campground I talked about and those buildings are under the same lease that we originally leased from the city. And so when the land exchange happens, those will revert back, since they're sitting on city property, they will revert back to the city, but they are sitting vacant now. And Career Building Academy, they had some internal problems that shut them down, but that we haven't heard from them in about 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Stacy, thank you so much. I think we'll see you again in the future when it's time to take action on this plan. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Well, everyone, we're on time. That's a never ever for me. It's 9:35. We will go on break, and we've got a 10-minute break scheduled, so we'll come back at 9:45. Hi, Dion. Looks like we're back in
We
being
are.
recorded mode. Great.
And we're live on YouTube.
Okay. Well, thank you. Danielle Eisenhart, good to see you. We are ready for your Aspira update.
Awesome. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Assistant Director Vilsack, and Director Prenslow. For the record, I'm Danielle Eisenhart, Licensed Pass and Reservation Section Manager. It's great to see all of you again. You couldn't get rid of me that easily. So let me real quick share my screen with you. All right. So today I'm here to provide you all with an update on our iPAUSE system, which is CPW's Integrated Parks and Wildlife System, which is our purchasing system for the agency. And I believe the last official update you all received on iPAUSE was last July, and a lot has changed since that time. So I'm really excited to be here today to be able to share several success stories and milestones regarding our iPAUSE system with you all today. So one of those biggest overarching celebration items is that our initial contract is coming to a close. It's really hard to believe that we started building this system 6 years ago with the goal of integrating 8 distinct legacy systems all into one. And that was a very ambitious goal because we were one of the very first parks and wildlife agencies in the nation to try to build a system that sold both parks and wildlife products. And so for a really quick historical recap for those newer commissioners, I wanted to kind of run through those 8 legacy systems really quickly with you. So the first was our TLS, or Total Licensing System, which was our hunt and fish license sales system previously. Also, there was the ORMS, which stood for Outdoor Recreation Management Suite, which was a system that tracked and recorded all of our campground reservation data and revenue. Then there was also PARKS, which stood for Parks Automatic Record Keeping System, which kept track of all of our general parks revenue. Also VRS, which was our vehicle registration systems, where folks had all of their renewals and registrations for boats, snowmobiles, and OHVs. We also had our retail program in a separate database, so all the sales of our maps, t-shirts, souvenirs, and that sort of thing. And then our hunter reservation system, which was where customers could reserve blinds or other small game hunting areas on both our parks and our state wildlife areas. And then our special wildlife licensing database. This is the database where we do some of our more specialized licenses like falconry, field trials, scientific collection licenses, wildlife rehab, etc. And then we've also been able to incorporate parts of our draw and application processes into this system as well. So one of the other things that I think is really exciting about iPAUSE is that we've been able to have much easier access to data, whether it's sales trends, customer demographics, or even just a better way to market and outreach to our customers. I also think we've gotten lots of good feedback in the recent couple of years from both our customers and staff that they are really liking the system. The last 3 legacy systems there on your screen are highlighted in bold because some significant changes to those system components have occurred within the last several weeks that I really wanted to bring specific attention to. So the first of those is our HRS, our hunter reservation system. So HRS within iPAUSE has been live in the system since August of 2019. However, just this week on Tuesday, the hunter reservation system was turned on for big game hunting as well. And this is very exciting because it provides a platform for our hunters to be able to make reservations on a first come, first served basis to hunt some of these conservation easement properties that CPW has purchased access rights to for big game hunting, but where access is limited to a certain number of hunters per season, for example. Previously, these access permits had to be issued by the area offices through hand draw systems. We currently have 8 big game properties that are turned on within the big game HRS system, and almost all of those are in the northwest part of the state. But I'm sure you'll see that expanding statewide very soon. The next one is our special wildlife licensing, which was also recently turned on for the very first time in the system back on May 27th. Again, this is for our specialized licenses like falconry, scientific collection, private lake licenses, aquatic import permits, etc. So as you can guess, this was a very specialized and customized ask of Aspira to build that part of the system for us, and it had lots of regulatory complexities. So far since go live, I'm very happy to report that we've had no major challenges or issues to report, and it's actually been very streamlined process for my special wildlife license administrator, Eric Slater, who easily does the job of 2 full-time employees, and so he's very happy to have this new system put in place. I also think this will be a great improvement for our customers, especially in year 2, where they can actually copy applications from a previous year to start their application for the current year without having to do all that manual typing requests every single year. So really happy about that as well. And then lastly, the secondary draw. I'm sure most of you know that our secondary draw application period turned on last Friday, June 5th. And it will be open for customers to apply through 8 p.m. on July 7th. The secondary draw, as a reminder, replaced our previous leftover draw, and it allows any applicant to be able to apply regardless if they applied in our primary draw or not. And this year it also incorporated both bear and pronghorn licenses that were left over after the primary draw, as well as deer and elk. I'm actually also, from an IPAWS Aspira update perspective, it's important to note that this is our first draw that will be run entirely by Aspira, so not our internal OIT databases. So that will save staff time and resources. And we're also excited to let you know that we've already surpassed the number of applications that we received in last year's leftover draw. Last year, our leftover draw had around 2,600 applications, and as of this morning, we're sitting at 10,610 applications for our secondary draw, so almost 5 times as many. Fingers crossed that the remainder of our secondary draw goes just as smoothly as our opening few days have. So while I wanted to mostly spend today celebrating where we've come with the IPAWS system, I did want to note it has not been all sunshines and rainbows. It's been an extremely long road, particularly for CPW staff, but also for members of the commission that have been through it. While I do not want to rehash or reopen old wounds, I did want to share a few issues that we have encountered since July, as well as some of my lessons learned as the new business owner for the IPAWS system. So the first one of those kind of big items was our system outage. I'm sure you remember the system outage that we experienced back in October. And while it was a very significant outage that lasted over 6 hours, it's been the only significant outage of the system in the past 6 years. And so overall, I just want to highlight that IPAWS is much more reliable and stable than any of our other previous legacy systems. Another problem that I wanted to bring your attention to is we had an issue with rounding up. During our spring turkey application period, we discovered quite by accident, by looking up a customer's account, that when a customer was selecting to round up as a donation to CPW, the system was actually deducting that donation from the amount paid instead of adding it. And so this was leaving the customer with both a balance due on their account, and in the case of limited licenses, it was also putting them in a fail to pay status. So luckily we caught the error very quickly. We only had 37 errors that we had to manually correct in the system, but needless to say, I asked them to turn it off throughout the primary draw big game application period until we were positive that it had been fixed and thoroughly tested. We were able to do that during the primary draw application period, and we're confident that we could turn it back on for the secondary draw. The next one, agent printer issues. We have external agents that sell licenses and passes for us, such as Walmart's, Cabela's, all those little mom and pop shops all over the state. And we were having some of those external agents were having printer issues for quite some time. These errors always seem to pop up miraculously around the 26th or 27th of each month. We reported lots of different Salesforce tickets to Aspera to get this issue resolved. And finally, after several months, they were able to determine the problem, that some of these printers were losing their drivers and they were not updating properly every month. So in early May, Aspera was able to run a patch to fix the problem. And then the other last bullet point there, ongoing VRS data migration struggles, is not an IPAWS issue. It's more of an issue internally on the CPW side. When all the data was brought over from our VRS system into IPAWS, it created millions of duplicate customer records. And therefore we spent the last year, since VRS went live in June of last year, trying to merge those duplicate accounts. Some of those merges were able to be done by Aspera through a manual or a automatic process, but many of them have had to be manually merged by hand by either temps or full-time employees within the license and pass and registration sections. Additionally, so we've spent the last year trying to merge those accounts. We've also tried to help customers learn how to renew online in the system by creating some helpful online tutorials and videos to try to help customers through that process. As far as lessons learned, not surprising to anyone, the main lessons learned that I've encountered from working with this external vendor: make sure you test everything thoroughly in our UAT or testing environment, but also test it in production. Sometimes things show up in production that did not show up in the testing environment. Also test often, even after, particularly after a system release. We've seen things that worked for a while and then there was a release and now they stopped working, like that roundup feature, for example. Also, of course, document. We have all of our meetings with Aspera recorded, and we also store those meetings for future reference, all the meeting notes, and also just get everything that they commit to and that we commit to in writing, just for future reference. With special licensing, we also learned that we need to be really specific in our requests. We need to provide examples that have all the details lined out. We can't just assume they'll use common sense and connect the dots on their own. So that was a little bit of a struggle that we went through with special licensing, but I feel like the end result is good. We got to a good place. Always ask for details and deliverable dates, and again, document those as well and hold them accountable for delivering things when they say they will. And then lastly, I feel like I spent the last year trying to build good relationships with Aspera leadership and all the staff over there. Again, so we can have a positive working relationship moving forward. I found having some on-site visits with those folks as well as weekly check-ins has been really helpful to build those good relationships. So another exciting update to report to all of you is Amendment 3 for our IPAWS contract was just signed this week. This amendment has been in the works for close to 2 years. So I know everyone that's been involved is very happy that it's finally coming to a close. It's finally being completed. And now that Amendment 3 is signed, we can begin negotiations for a contract extension until we want to again go out for RFP and see what other vendors may potentially have to offer. So that contract extension will be kind of entitled Amendment 4, and we're busy working on that right now as we speak. Amendment 3 and our contract extension will allow both agencies to start fresh as we move forward from both a system kind of build phase to more of an operation and maintenance period. There's also some provisions in Amendment 3 that update our liability standards to put in place better protections for our customers' sensitive personal information. And then the one that I really want to highlight that, in my opinion, is one of the best additions to this contract is that Aspera is now required to maintain operation of our iPause system or a substantially similar system, even upon expiration or termination of the contract, until we have a similar operable system in place. So I think that provision really sets us up for success in the future. The other exciting thing about closing out our original contract is that it allows us the opportunity to look at new features and functionalities beyond what was in our original scope of work. All right, and one of those opportunities that we've been talking about a little bit is electronic products. And I know this is a topic that several members of the commission are very excited in. So I wanted to give you a quick update on those electronic product discussions. So as you recall, we set the stage for electronic products back in November of last year when the commission approved new regulatory language to incorporate electronic products into our definitions of pass and licenses. And since then, we've been meeting with the Aspera staff to see what electronic options are currently available for us to deploy in the very near future. So while ultimately our end goal is to have some type of an iPause or CPW app available to customers, that's kind of more of a longer term goal due to development costs and or the necessity to involve a third-party API. So what is available right now to turn on in the system as soon as we're ready are virtual wallet products such as Google Pay or Apple Wallet, as well as electronic PDF versions of licenses and passes that can be emailed directly to a customer's email account. And you can see a couple pictures there, what an electronic PDF looks like for a boat registration, for example. All right, so to kind of determine which CPW products the agency felt would best be suited for an electronic format, the iPause business team, which is an internal group of CPW staff that are responsible for making all the iPause related business decisions, we met to discuss agency recommendations related to e-products. The group also discussed an anticipated timeline for deployment, potential obstacles for implementation, and also different configuration options within the system for how those would be displayed. Those recommendations were then shared with our CPW leadership team, and I'll kind of highlight the high level of those recommendations for you here today. So the team agreed that a phased-in approach would be best for several reasons. There was some concern that not many of our customers currently use Google Pay or Apple Wallet on their phones today, and many felt that perhaps the electronic PDF fulfillment option might actually work better for the majority of our customers. This option is already being utilized for, again, temporary registrations, as well as some of our special licenses, for example. Others thought that perhaps we should release both electronic options and during like a pilot phase and see what our customers seem to latch onto. There was also some specific concern for particular products being available electronically during the first phase, and things that the group felt the agency needed more time to hash out. Some of those things were like on our small game licenses, our HIP number, how that HIP would be noted on an electronic license since it's a separate system and they have to call in and get a unique number, and there would be no place to note that on an electronic license. And then for a fixed annual park passes or transferable annual passes, there was some concern from park staff that they don't typically interact with every customer directly. And so instead our park staff rely on quick visual checks of those passes. And until scanning technology would be available at our parks and gates, it seemed like the logistics of an e-pass could be problematic for some of our park staff. As far as daily park passes, the group felt like this would be a really good option for the future, but they kind of wanted to wait until iPause was on a different Aspera user platform where we could utilize some different technology such as day use entry that some of the other states such as Texas are utilizing for day passes. As far as licenses with carcass tags, the group felt like there was a lot of promise in going that direction for the future. But to be most effective, they felt like we first needed to have our law enforcement app, which is currently being built, up and operational so that the licenses could be scanned, field checks could be recorded, and similar things. And we also felt like when all that's in place, we could have a really good tool for harvest estimates going forward. So again, none of these things are completely off the table, but for the first phase of development, the group recommended implementing the following electronic products. For park passes, just doing individual walk-ins, as well as our dog off-leash daily and annual passes. These products are already carried on an individual, so they're very similar to a license. So they would be an easy pass type to implement as an on-person electronic product. Also, ANS stamps are also currently just used as a printed receipt, so they would be a really easy product to turn on electronically. And then for our wildlife licenses, the group felt comfortable for the pilot phase using all of our fishing licenses, including our extra rod stamps, our 1-day and our 5-day licenses. So with that, before I open it up to general questions, I wanted to get just the commission's thoughts on electronic products and if we're on the right track, or if you have any other guidance for us before we kind of go from the brainstorming phase to more of the implementation phase on this part of the system.
Great, thanks, Danielle. Yeah, can't believe we're here. We're at a place where we're extending the contract and considering options and made it. So great work by everyone. Yeah, we do have plenty of commissioner comments. Commissioner Garcia.
Right, we have come a long way. I'm a fairly new commissioner, but I remember when we were looking at alternate vendors and RFPs and getting out of this group altogether. So congratulations in working through all the problems, tremendous problems. I do have one suggestion, and that is on the small game license. Many of us don't have a fishing license because we have a combo. And so a e-fishing license won't do us any good. And if the only holdup on a small game license, at first I understand that the big game licenses are a separate problem, but small game, if the only holdup is the hit number, I would suggest that that should not be a problem. First, we have to call in to get our hit number, and then we physically hand write that number on our license. So if I had an electronic small game or combo license, I can record that hit number any one of a million places because all I have to have is the number. It doesn't have to physically really be on my license. So I would hope that we can get it. If that's the only issue, that I would really like to see us move towards the small game license as well.
Thanks, Commissioner Garcia. We will do some more digging and see what we can come up with. That was the only main consideration or concern for small games. So we'll keep working on that.
Great. Commissioner McDaniel.
I had a question here for Danielle. When you were talking about wildlife licenses, was it a combination like the Park Pass where it would be an e-license and also the availability to print it like you showed the boat registration?
Yeah, so moving forward, we would have the customer would be able to choose basically what they would want, if they wanted it to be a physical license or if they wanted to be an electronic product, or we could even have the system configured so they could have both. So we haven't really made a firm decision on that, but basically it would be customer preference and they would self-select whether they wanted to have their pass or license electronically.
And would that be, follow-up question, Danielle, would that be, how would that be different than, you know, I'll call it duplicate licenses when we want to go in and print today? You know, depending on whether there's a fee involved or not. Some states start to charge a fee, some do not. Of course, that's kind of dependent whether it's big game or small game too. Have you thought at all about the duplicate aspect of it, including park passes?
So I think that was one concern with allowing a customer to both have it physically fulfilled, as well as an electronic option, is the transferability piece. But there are other ways, to check driver's licenses and assure that the customer who's holding it is the actual owner of that product. So there's definitely things that we need to think about in regards to that. But in general, we want to trust our customers and that they're doing the right thing and that they're not going to be misusing the system. But we'll definitely be keeping those things in mind as we're implementing what options we want to have available.
Yeah, and I was getting to that too because of, obviously the real change we made in terms of annual passes is, and I'll call it the hang pass or the family pass, being something physical you could share with family members and move, from vehicle to vehicle, and how that might, I'll call it interact with the idea of an e-pass for parks. But thank you.
Yep. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And Commissioner McDaniel, thank you for all of your work on iPause with Aspira and with staff. It's again been very helpful. So thank you. Commissioner Haskett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I'm really happy that this year this is the first time I have not heard any complaints, and the system worked well for the big game draw. I like that we're moving forward on electronic things. I think we live in a world of electronic. Everybody uses their phone, and that's a great way to go. I do have one question. After the secondary draw, have we looked at doing a Tuesday release date instead of every day to make it fair to all the people who do not work in an office?
So thank you, Commissioner Haskett, for the compliments and as well as the question about what we're going to do with all of our leftovers after the secondary draw. I believe in July, you'll be hearing a presentation from Krista on some of the outreach that we did around the refund reissue process. So we did several surveys with both our customers, with our staff, and with our external agents to see what their preferences were as far as releasing those returned licenses to customers, whether it's randomly like we do now or whether it's a set day and time during the week. So I think you'll be hearing an update and see the results of those surveys in July.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Garcia.
I just want to put in my vote for having the alternative license if we get to e-license. My phone crashes and dies, and so I wouldn't want to be caught with no phone because I could always go back to my physical license if we had the dual license. So just my vote. Thank you.
Makes sense. Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you. So as you mentioned that an iPause app is currently not an option due to the development costs. Could you expand upon that a little bit? And also I'm wondering, is there an actual plan in place to segregate or create the funds in order to be able to develop and implement an actual app program for CPW?
Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer, for the question. I think we're at a really exciting time where we're going into a new contract. And so there's opportunities for us to negotiate things like that and to the next contract or a contract extension. I think there's also some opportunities to do some more investigating into third-party apps like the My Colorado app. So those are all things on my short list of things to look into so that we can ultimately get an app in place, because that would be the ideal situation, I think, for everyone.
What is that timeline?
I could let Assistant Director Truitt speak to that. We're trying to get Amendment 4 or our contract extension signed before the end of this month. But then there's also some more room for negotiations even after that contract is technically signed. But I don't know, Lauren, if you have anything else you want to add on that.
Thank you. For the record, Lauren Truitt, Assistant Director for Information and Education. Commissioner Schaefer, thank you for the question. It's actually something that Danielle and I've talked about. I've had really good conversations with the Aspira leadership. Right now, our main priority is to get an extension on the books so that we don't hit our June 30 deadline and be forced into a position that we're not ready to take on with an RFP. We have the ability to do five 1-year extensions. So the extension of a 5-year contract with Aspira before we have to go out to RFP. Part of those conversations is centering around the development and build of an app for the agency, knowing that will allow us to alleviate a lot of printing costs for brochures if we can have them digitally in that application. So it is a high priority for us. In terms of an actual timeline, we haven't developed what that looks like. But Danielle and I, once we get the amendment for the contract extension signed, those are the next conversations we will be having with the Aspira team and our internal iPOS business team.
Okay, I appreciate that. And, you know, I think it kind of goes without saying, but there's some extreme interest, I think, from the commissioners. And if there's, I'm interested in being able to overcome any of the obstacles that are required, whether that be, you know, identifying additional revenue sources or funding sources, any of the regulatory approaches, or, you know, issues with OIT, whatever it may be. This is something that I think is a really big priority for a variety of different reasons. So I appreciate everyone's work on this.
I appreciate that offer, Commissioner Schaefer. We will certainly come back to the commission and the CPW leadership team with estimates and project proposals.
Good deal. Thank you, Lauren and Danielle. Commissioner Hauser.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I would maybe just concur, maybe this is a little bit out of order, but underscore Commissioner Schaefer's comments. Maybe I'm conflating a couple of issues, so I'm just going to sort of talk and then staff can react. Curious about, we've talked, and Commissioner Schaefer's brought it up in the past as well, about sort of data collection opportunities, particularly on the Parks Pass side, and whether or not we're seeing improvements in that related to this presentation. And I would just also put it out there that perhaps the app is a potential collaboration with GoCo, and that maybe we think about an opportunity that it's a more comprehensive app that could serve multiple purposes. There are already, as we know, CoTrex and other apps out there. And so I suspect that you've already done some due diligence on that, but rather than sort of start from scratch, are there places where we might fold into an existing app, or there are other organizations where we might collaborate on one? And again, just based on Emily's presentation earlier in our board meeting yesterday, there are potentially funding collaborations and opportunities coming up that we might try to outline now and start to think about, since I agree, I think there's some real urgency in this, and in my view, we're behind the curveball from a technology standpoint, and just innovation and being kind of current in the use of technology and what platforms people are really going to use. And at the same time, I appreciate Commissioner Haskett's comment about people that are not always sitting around on their phone or their laptop or whatever, and to make sure that we have an opportunity for them as well from an equity standpoint. Thank you.
I appreciate the comments, Commissioner Hauser. It is a balance. You know, it's making sure that we have resources for those who aren't on their phones, or if their phones die, that we have the availability of information to those customers. But the collaboration between multiple apps, I mean, we've got our fishing app, we've got CoTrex, we have a lot of digital resources available to our customers. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not starting from scratch, but reimagining what we have and making it a comprehensive CPW business tool that really allows us to seamlessly and instantly get information and accessibility into our customers' hands. So I appreciate those comments and thought process as we move forward.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you. I wanted to first, Lauren, just say, I really believe the approach you're taking is very it's very logical. I think it's very pragmatic, but most importantly, I think it's very strategic in terms of where you stand today and trying to get Amendment 3 completed, and then tackle larger, questions, whether it be increased functionality, stability and security of the system, and the option to look forward to lay out future system requirements, or think about, would it be the right time to look at alternative, vendors or in-house development of a future system. I also wanted to make join the comments about, it's been several years, obviously, and I think that it's really hard for folks who are at a distance to not really understand the magnitude of what you accomplished, or what the team at CPW accomplished in merging these 8 legacy systems together. Having a history in that over my past career, it's one of the hardest things to do versus, quite frankly, writing something from scratch, is to take things that are different legacy and merge data together. And that data migration and integration is tremendously complex. So congratulations on that. To Commissioner Hauser's comment, I just wanted to add that, I'm one of the few, and I think Luke's in that boat as well, that, I apply in multiple states for, either fishing or hunting opportunities, virtually all the states in the West, because I'm a pretty active sportsman. Our system compares very favorably. And the only thing I'd say is I don't think we're behind when it comes to this kind of an application. Are we behind when you come to normal retail apps where people shop and so forth? Absolutely. But I would say I'll change my wording, Commissioner Hauser. I think all states are behind. There are some great singular, I'll call it purpose apps that might be more forward, specifically in camping reservations and those kind of things. But even states that are, adjoining us, that have many fewer products or fewer big game species or so forth to sell, don't really have an app that, allows that additional functionality. They're really, where they're at is what we're talking about, which is the ability to sign on, print a PDF copy, those kind of things for their licenses. And in really, I'll call it more narrow circumstances. That doesn't mean that we don't have a huge opportunity to step ahead of those states and go to a more electronic-based platform. But I'm really proud of where I think our staff is and what they've done and their plan moving forward. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDaniel, and it's all the team. I can't take credit for the amazing work that they've done, but we will continue working on the strategy and vision going forward to continue building off this amazing system, but really be able to imagine what our future can look like.
Okay, well, thank you. I think we're, one more hand, Commissioner Adams.
So briefly, thank you so much, Lauren Truitt. As always, again, a wondering opportunity. When we're talking about issues of diversity and inclusion, we also have to think about our sourcing and who our vendors are, and making sure that we are being very mindful about who we are offering these opportunities to support our agency. And I would hazard a guess, if you looked at who our vendors are and what communities they represent, we also will have an overrepresentation there. So again, making sure that we are being very mindful. We know that Black-led, Indigenous-led, Latina, Latinx, Latine-led, Asian-led organizations receive less funding, less venture capital funding, less opportunities in business. And so, that's where affirmative action, came into play. And that was always about qualified people and getting them access. And so we don't need to pull that card because it's already in federal legislation. But again, how are we as an agency holding ourselves accountable to all aspects of diversity and inclusion per the Department of Natural Resources. So I just wanted to add that other component lens as you're doing your work as procurers. We have an added responsibility of millions of dollars to ensure that that money is going out equitably and that we are being mindful around not exacerbating the overrepresentation of some communities at the expense of others. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Unless there's additional comments, let's move on.
Thank you, everyone. Time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Danielle. All right, consent agenda. Agenda item 22, we did have a request to pull the Fishers Peak naming from the consent agenda for discussion. Commissioner Haskett, do you want to get us started on that conversation?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a couple concerns. The biggest one being that when all of this started, we were told that it would also be a state wildlife area. And I see that it just is Fishers Peak State Park. So I have a concern about that. And I want to make sure that we're going to be allowed to hunt on what I understood to be a large portion of the property. And just a little side note to that, the Crazy French name has a huge history behind it. And I also understand that Fishers Peak has a history of called Raton Mesa. So I'm a little surprised we're not using any of those names also. But the biggest part of my concern is the state wildlife area and the hunting.
I don't know who the best, maybe Director Prenslow, is that, oh, Southeast Region Manager Ackerman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Haskett. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and address those questions and appreciate Commissioner Haskett continuing to keep an eye on this property. It definitely has been an iterative process. And you might recall when we first came to you for Habitat Stamp funding associated with this property, there was a different structure put together. It was intended to be to buy into a conservation easement, to be held by other partners with some land management capabilities. And over time, the structure of that deal changed. Governor Polis got involved and helped us out and ended up moving from more of a conservation easement partnership fragmented approach to a holistic purchase of the property, and declared it at that time to be Fishers Peak State Park. And so in name, the intent is for the entire property to be a state park, but the process was iterative. And so as Commissioner Haskett said, when we first started out, we talked about the southern 2/3 of it being a state wildlife area and maybe the northern third of it being a state park. Through that process, the entire boundary has been moved into the state park realm, but that didn't change the initial intent either. As Commissioner Haskett said, a great portion of the property was intended from the beginning to be open to hunting and remains so. Nothing has changed in our approach with regard to that. Now, that said, we're just beginning the master planning process. We've selected a consultant and we're working through the master plan planning process right now, and we'll move into the actual active master planning very soon. But hunting remains a significant component of this property, and we're still focused on the southern 2/3 of the property for hunting opportunities on the state park, even though it will in name be a state park. As I mentioned yesterday, Habitat Stamp funding contributed about 1/3 of the dollars to the purchase price of the state park. Commissioner Haskett also mentioned the name, and this is something we've had a lot of discussion about as well. The standard convention for the naming of state parks is generally to take the most prominent feature of the state park and name the state park after that feature. And in this case, that's Fishers Peak. Some other names that have come up, as Commissioner Haskett mentioned, are the Crazy French Ranch. That's what it was called privately when it was in private ownership and has been for a long time. And Raton Mesa is indeed in the park as well. And, you know, we had some discussion about those names and worked with all of the partners to talk about the name. You know, because of that naming convention, kind of settled on Fishers Peak State Park. Crazy French was definitely in consideration. We were a little concerned, honestly, about the deviating from the standard, but also including the word crazy in a state park, might have some connotations that we were a little worried about. That said, the intent in the state park is to talk about history, certainly, of the area, not just of the park or the ranch previous to that, and be able to put up interpretive signs associated with, the settlement period, the pre-settlement period, the native period. We're currently doing archaeological surveys to ensure that we're preserving whatever artifacts are down there in order to aid in that process. And so in the end, we can use those names, Crazy French, Raton Mesa, and other names associated with the area to name trails, to name features and other things. But we did settle with the partners on the name Fisher's Peak State Park, as that's what it's been called in the common vernacular and is a common name used throughout the community. So hopefully that gets close to answering your 3 questions, Commissioner Haskett.
Okay, yes, thank you. And if I can make a suggestion, I don't know if in a committee or whatever you're going to call it on putting all of this together, I would suggest that we still keep Jim Vigil in the loop. He is from there. He's native to the area, knows a lot of the history, and I think he would be a big asset to us to keep him working on this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Commissioner Vigil.
Yeah, and to further that discussion, that peak was historically Raton Peak in conjunction with Raton Mesa, but it was also Raton Peak. And you look at it, I read a lot of history books of this area, and I've looked at a lot of maps, and on every old map, it's Raton Peak. And Raton is actually an anglicized name for raton. Raton is a mouse, a male mouse, as a matter of fact. And that was a historic name. I don't know if it has anything to do with the endangered New Mexico jumping mouse, but I just, in every book I've read that are really past, they all talked about Raton Peak. So, it's Raton Pass, it's Raton Mesa, even the Colorado Springs weather lady that we watch on television calls it the Raton Mesa. So I'm not happy with the Fisher Peak name at all, because it's non-historical. It was, I believe I've read books that it was a lieutenant that told his troops that now he's a captain, according to the letter we got from Brett. But anyhow, he was an officer. He told his troops that he could run up to the top of that peak. They were camped down by the Purgatory River, but he could run up to that peak and be back in time for breakfast or something like that. I don't know if those were the exact words. Well, I don't think he ever did it, because there's no proof that he ever was up on there. And being in the military, knowing the background of officer enlisted people's relationship, I think that the enlisted people knew he couldn't do it, and they, as a folly, they called it Fisher's Peak. That's the way it works in the military. So I think that's how it actually got its name, but it was always Raton Peak. So that's my say, and I don't like the name, but that's another issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Vigil. We've got a few more hands now. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Vigil. I think it might be good to take a second look. And I corresponded with Manager Ackerman on this, but Fisher's Peak is spelled wrong. So if you want to be historically correct, Captain Waldemar Fisher spelled his name with a C, and somehow Fisher's Peak left the C out. So it's not even historically correct to name a peak after somebody and then you spell their name wrong. So I think it's worth taking a second look. I think Raccoon would sell more T-shirts if we're trying to get into the retail business. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Garcia. That has some history to it as well, the spelling of Fishers. It's kind of been accepted in the common vernacular down in the area in all of the myriad of other things that are named Fisher's Peak, including the peak itself without the C. And so we followed that convention, and the governor actually weighed in on this as well, and mostly about the apostrophe discussion, and decided that we call it Fishers without the apostrophe. As far as Raton, we did talk about that as well. One of the concerns that we had with regard to the name Raton is that the city just over the border in New Mexico is named Raton. And we were a little concerned about tying the state park too closely to that city rather than the city of Trinidad in southern Colorado. And so that's one of the reasons that we, had one of the concerns we had associated with that name.
Thank you, Brett. Commissioner Adams.
First of all, I want to thank Commissioner, oh goodness, sorry, I'm just so used to using everybody's first name. Thank you. I want to just thank Commissioner Haskett for taking off this item on the consent agenda, and I think it's a wonderful modeling of how we can better use our time, and when we need to, we can use our privilege and powers to take things off and have a deeper conversation. So I just appreciate you using that lever. And again, as I was researching about the Albury person, Fisher, I do have some concerns about his legacy. It's not clear to me, who is he fighting there? Was it indigenous communities? We have a lot of of namings of things around here of people who were not always on the right side for everyone. And so I want us to be very mindful as well around ensuring that if we are nominating people, and the names of people, making sure that we are investigating deeply into their legacy. And as I said, when I researched it, I couldn't find anything other than the story that Commissioner Vigil referenced. And that to me is quite telling. So I have just some concerns around ensuring that this is somebody who this agency can stand behind, and making sure that we're doing our due diligence so that we don't end up with a John Wayne situation. Thank you.
Commissioner Bray.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to weigh in on just a little bit on some of this. We have other areas. I'm not going to really get involved in what the main name should be. I think everyone has spoken pretty eloquently on both sides of that issue. Whatever we name it, there can be sub-names, and Regional Manager Ackerman referred to this in his comments. There can be trails, there can be areas. For example, close to me is the Dan Noble State Wildlife Area, but within that state wildlife area, there's tracks named after various other people or objects, which are good. And so I think you could incorporate some of these other names that way. You can have Raton Mesa, for example, as a tract or an area, and that perhaps could allude to Commissioner Haskett's concerns. Maybe that's a hunting area or something, whatever, something along those lines. I would also suggest there ought to be a trail, a campground, a park bench, or something named after Jim Vigil.
Love that. Thanks, Commissioner Bray. You're getting all sorts of thumbs up and claps. Commissioner Hauser.
Thanks, Madam Chair. That's a fabulous idea. I see that Jim didn't weigh in on that one, but I just maybe want to underscore, it seems to me that there's a huge opportunity. We've also had a lot of partners in this, TPL and Nature Conservancy and others, that I think we can tap. And given the long history and really how large and prominent the property is, it's worth doing our due diligence on the history. It's worth doing this right. We don't get this opportunity that often. So certainly signage, trails, historical markers, all of that, to Commissioner Adams' point, the long heritage of this land. Let's unpack that and do that in the appropriate ways. It also is adjacent to our New Mexico friends and pueblos in New Mexico. So to the extent, again, that, and my assumption, Brett, is that this, obviously we've had long conversations with the state and there's been access points through New Mexico prior. So again, just, once in a lifetime, truly once in a generation opportunity. So to take the time not to edit every word, that's not our job, and to really think about ways that we can reflect it as a state park, but also a state wildlife area, the sort of the naming, all the naming opportunities and so forth, recognizing it's changed hands numerous times. We have an opportunity to reflect that in I think really important ways. And to Commissioner Haskett's point, I think going into this, we all recognize that it had multiple use opportunities, and to not reflect that initially sort of brands it from a marketing standpoint, branding. It brands it sort of early on as a state park, and maybe doesn't put out there at the front end of this an opportunity to have our public really understand the multiple uses. So I would just say, let's be really intentional about that.
Thanks, Commissioner Hauser. Emily Urbanic, I think, with some GOCO perspective.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to chime in as one of the 5 partners on this project. The visioning process is underway, and there are many subcommittees that are discussing a multitude of what has been talked about today. And from GOCO's perspective, we want to be supportive of that planning process, especially at the local level, and would be open to continuing to talk about the name, especially making the local community is behind it. So just a little from GOCO's perspective.
So it sounds like, and Councilor Monahan, I'll turn to you a little bit. Seems like since there is so much discussion, before we do a motion for consent agenda, we can just pull this topic out and not vote on it today. Is that something that we could do?
Absolutely, it is, Madam Chair.
Okay. Brett, looked like you had something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one clarification that I failed to mention. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I alluded to it very early on in my initial comments, but I didn't want to give the impression that this has been a flippant process up to this point. I mean, certainly we've had significant discussion, and to your points, it has mostly been internal, but we've met with all 5 of the partners to talk about this as well. And this was the consensus that we did reach. I didn't want to just give the impression that we said, well, sounds like a good idea, and threw it on paper. That said, I do understand the comments and points that have been made today, and certainly we can go back and have those discussions again. But I didn't want to give the impression that they haven't yet been had.
Thanks, Brett. So I think what I'd like to do, Doug Vilsack, looks like you have a hand up as well.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add a little bit to what Brett has said, of just kind of about working with the 5 partners. As well, I was talking with Director Gibbs, and we had a conversation with him about this a month or so ago. And just to be clear, that we did reach out to the Commission on Indian Affairs, really to determine if there were any kind of historical names of this place, Fisher's Peak and kind of the surrounding area. And essentially the word that we got back were, many different indigenous groups use these areas, but there was no kind of distinctive name from those groups of the peak or kind of any of these areas. So that is something we were really cognizant of as well. And I think, as Brett mentioned, we have been working very hard to kind of do cultural resource studies, things like that. I actually just amended the Senate Bill 3 that's funding, or hopefully will in the next few hours pass out of the House, to make sure that we can use some of that money for the cultural resource studies that we need to do at Fishers to really do any large scale development there. So I did just kind of want to make those points that there have been a lot of internal deliberations here, and we certainly are not glossing over the history of this property, certainly the indigenous history of the property. And my understanding, I know Emily and some of you have been much more involved in the kind of day-to-day of the master planning process, but that's certainly something on our minds as we think about how we build this park out, not only kind of recognizing the indigenous history of this place, but involving the tribes, both the ones in existence in Colorado now and others, in what happens on this property. So.
Thanks, Doug. Commissioner Adams.
Appreciate that comment, Doug. And again, I want us to be mindful of all the histories and not just settler and indigenous. You know, the more I find out about African American history in this country, the more I realize just how badly we've been erased. Not to mention the Asian as well as Latino, Latinx, Latine people. So we need to be very mindful about all of the culture. Again, so going back to the DNR goals specifically around ensuring that we are being representative of all Coloradans. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Prenslow.
Sounds like, you know, obviously Brett Ackerman may have something else to say about that, but for sure getting the idea that the commission would like us to weigh into this idea a little more before we do that. So obviously you can take a formal vote, or you can just leave it up to Mr. Monahan if you want to, you know, give a general consent that is take it off the consent agenda, and we'll work on this issue a little harder. And
thanks,
talk to others, obviously.
That's what I think I'd like to do. I think I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda without the renaming item, and we'll pull that for future discussion.
So
is that an acceptable motion, Councilor Monahan?
It is, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So moved.
Commissioner Hauser, any second?
Second.
Commissioner Schaefer, thank you. So again, the motion is to approve the consent agenda without the renaming of Fisher's Peak item, and that item is pulled. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so it sounds like we will continue to have those conversations, if that's okay, Region Manager Ackerman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just one comment, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the commission's time on this issue for sure. You know, we are trying to work towards beginning the planning, and that's the reason we're bringing it to you for a name right now, is so that we can actually call it something as we plan it and work through our messaging with the public. And so we would want to come back to you in a pretty timely way to move this back through. So it won't be long, I would imagine, until we're back in front of you.
Do you, Assistant Director Vilsack?
I just kind of want to second that. I mean, I think there is some urgency behind this decision. Of course, we don't want to rush too quickly, but for example, I know our kind of folks have been working on getting out a new website to try to fundraise to support the building of the park. Obviously, we're not getting all the money that we had hoped to get through the legislature. Times are tough. So it's just challenging to market a park, to put signage up, hopefully for an opening sooner rather than later, without some understanding of kind of the name of the thing that you're raising money for. So just, you know, I think we do need an answer sooner rather than later, I suppose. So maybe we can think about what that process is to kind of get to that point.
Assistant Director Truitt.
Along those lines, and again, I don't want to rush the naming process and the approval, but we also need to consider signage of the park on the highways to the location, making sure that we have enough time to create our interpretive signage, our office signage, and the merchandising piece of this property as well, and the time that will take not only to design but order and implement.
To that end, Brett, Lauren, others, do you want to maybe through Laura get back to us on if you want to do just a call, sometimes we'll do just those kind of commission phone calls or something ahead of the July meeting. If you do want to have discussion on this, obviously we don't usually take action on those calls, but if whatever you would like to do to expedite this process, and thank you for addressing our concerns, let us know. I think people would be open for a call here in a week or two, or at the July meeting, or however you want to do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks everyone. All right, agenda item 23, is Jerry Horak with us?
Yes, he is.
Yep, Madam Chair, we'll work on getting him unmuted. My colleague's going to help with that. Mr. Horak, looks like we have you unmuted and that your video's on. So are you ready to go?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate have a chance to speak with you. I appreciate
Mr. Horak, it's difficult to hear you. I don't know if you can turn up your volume. Is anyone else having a hard time?
Is that better?
Okay.
Is that better?
A little better, yeah. You might just have to expand your voice.
Is that better?
Oh, that's great.
Okay, so I appreciate being on the agenda. The good news is working with Todd Schmidt, and I assume he worked with Danielle. One of the concerns I had was on the hunter reservation system, especially for waterfowl, that the system lets you start trying to get your reservation at 12 midnight, 2 weeks before you would do it. And as you can imagine, 12 midnight is not a very convenient time to go on the internet to do it. Historically, until this past year, it was 8 o'clock when it was under the Division of Wildlife, and then under the Parks and Wildlife, it was 9 o'clock was the time that these were made. And according to Todd, he, in working with Danielle, they're going to be able to get it to 9 o'clock again, which I really appreciate, 9 a.m. in the morning, which to me is a great change. The other concern I have is deals with concurrency, which simply means the old system, if I called in on the phone and I was the first or second caller of the day that got answered, there were usually 2 or 3 people answering the phones. If whatever unit I did not want is not available to reserve, I just say, okay, I'd like, another unit, and then I would probably get that. Under this system, how it works is when you go in there and you basically get at whenever the system starts, you basically get a click right on the unit you want. You're sitting right there until whatever the time period begins. It used to be 12 midnight, so a millisecond after 12 midnight, you click on the unit you want, and you find out very quickly whether you got it or not. If you do not get it, you get kicked out, in the sense of you have to go all the way back into the system again, and you lost your place in line. So there's a thing called concurrency, which would then allow you to keep your place in line until you got a unit. And I know Todd was working, I assume, with Danielle to ask about that to see if the vendor could do it. But it's a big step back. It's a worse system than it was before with that particular characteristic not available. And that's really the main 2 points. The other one I want to say, I appreciate, it was great watching your meeting, the work that you guys do, as well as the work that the folks that I work with are with all the time, the wildlife folks and the parks folks. So I appreciate the work that everyone does on this. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. Any discussion or feedback from staff or commission?
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Danielle. Go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Horak, for coming on. I do want to let you know that as of Tuesday, the time has changed to 9 a.m. So that system modification did deploy with the big game HRS release this week. So hopefully that will help some of your concerns, and I will look more closely at the process flow and how we can improve that in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner McDaniel.
Danielle, could you respond, or someone respond to Mr. Horak's comment with regards to this concurrency and, in essence, keeping your spot in line, and the change that was done in the past, and I guess the logic behind that, why we prefer that today? Is it because it's like the draw system, you don't get your second choice until everybody's looked at there first, or how's that working?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner McDaniel. I obviously wasn't around during the build of the initial HRS system. So I don't know if there was discussions then that occurred on a preference for one over the other. I'm assuming it was likely just the way that Aspera built that component of the system. I know for like big game licenses, we're looking at like a Ticketmaster approach where you can hold licenses until you check out. So it sounds like a similar issue, a little bit different, but I think there are ways that we can look at improving it without having to kick you all the way back. But again, I'll have to start those discussions with Aspera and see the complexities that are involved to making those changes.
Thank you, Danielle. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, Danielle, don't we have similar or at least reservation systems around the state? We've got them at Bar Lake. I'm just wondering why we don't have some sort of uniform system.
I guess I'm confused, Commissioner Garcia, with the question. All of our hunter reservations are within the same platform within the system, whether it's small game, big game. So Bar Lake is still in HRS. So I don't know if I understand your question correctly.
So does Bar Lake have the same issue?
So it sounds like any property that's within our HRS system has the same issue because it's all in the same platform.
Okay, so it's a bigger issue than just Tamarack.
Correct.
Okay, so I think it would be good to take a look to see what we can do.
Thank you. We'll do that.
I was muted. Any additional feedback from staff or commission? Okay, thank you, Dr. Horak.
Thanks.
Appreciate you joining us today.
All right.
Okay, we'll go to agenda item 24, public comment. Obviously in your packets as per usual. Thank you to staff for compiling all the public comment. We had about 75 or so comments come in. And we do have 2 people that have signed up to give in-person comment. Katie, I think you can help us. We've got Miss Sharp from Great Old Broads for Wilderness.
Yep, so Ms.
Sally's
Sharp
with us.
first. Yep, Ms. Sharp, you should be unmuted. Would you like us to turn on your video as well? Ms. Sharp, are you there? I'm not hearing her.
Why don't we try turning on her video so we can see?
Okay.
Maybe she's trying to give us a,
All right. Mike, would you please turn on Ms. Sharp's video too?
There we go. Hi, Sally. We can't hear you for some reason. I don't know if maybe you're muted on your end. Yeah, we can't hear you. Maybe if you have earbuds, try plugging those in, or try doing the up-down volume on your keyboard, just to like, sometimes that helps. There
it is.
Okay.
Gotcha.
There you go. I
Okay.
accidentally did that. So
Welcome.
I have a statement. Thank you. I have a statement that's a little bit longer than the 3 minutes allowed. I would hope to be able to read the whole thing if possible.
There, I was on
Madam
mute. Sorry. If you go ahead and get started, yeah, if you can try to keep that closer to the 3 minutes, that's really helpful for us, obviously, but please go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Sally Sharp, and I'm the Four Corners Grassroots Regional Coordinator for Great Old Broads for Wilderness. I'm here today to express concern about the April rule change that requires the public to purchase a hunting or fishing license to enjoy state wildlife areas, whether or not they are hunting or fishing. My understanding is that this rule change was handled as a non-agenda item at April's meeting, so the public had no chance to comment prior to the commission vote. For this reason, I would like to read my entire statement. It is unclear why this new regulation is being implemented. We learned that a number of state wildlife areas where recreational use is significantly impacting the purpose of SWAs to protect wildlife habitat, and there has been an uptick of illegal long-term encampments in these areas, and that are very costly to clean up. This is not an adequate reason to implement this regulation. Rather, it is an issue of enforcement of current regulations. According to an article in the Durango Herald dated June 5th, 2020, CPW is implementing the new rules so more segments of the community shoulder the cost of maintaining lands for wildlife habitat. We certainly know people aren't going to be happy about it. We've already had complaints around the state from folks, said spokesman Joe Lewandowski. It's going to be a tough thing to explain things to people, this to people, but we have costs and we have to pay for those costs. Obtaining adequate funding for SWAs is a hurdle. With the current Pittman-Roberts and Dingell-Johnson legislation, there's a significant risk of losing federal funding if the habitat stamp were extended to SWAs. We fear unforeseen circumstances that may cause much consternation and resentment. For example, land boundaries are not always marked so that people may cross into an SWA without knowing it. On a personal note, I am new to Durango, and this winter I discovered that Haviland Lake is a wonderful place to go snowshoeing. I would be happy enough if I had to pay some sort of parking fee or use fee to snowshoe, but to ask me to buy a fishing license to snowshoe is ludicrous. The new regulation is a workaround for an old problem. CPW needs to devise some way for non-consumptive quiet users and wildlife enthusiasts that will be earmarked exclusively for wildlife habitat protection. Great Old Broads supports creative remedies and can offer collaboration in seeking funding solutions that meet the needs of all users and CPW. Until then, I ask that you review this new regulation and stop its implementation until we can figure out a better way to resolve these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Appreciate everything you do for Great Old Broads. You guys are a fantastic partner and appreciate your time in joining us today. I would like, we do have a couple of hands, but I'd like staff to, just on the first comment with regard to the decision and the discussion being made open to the public. I don't know, Katie, if you're prepared to answer that, but I do think that we did make sure that that was notified to the public.
Right, so whenever we have the commission do a rulemaking, those are noticed. It's about a month and a half in advance of the meeting that the rulemaking notice goes out. And then we have the information posted on CPW's website, the rulemaking notice, and then, encourage people to sign up for our email distribution list to also be notified when the rulemaking notice is posted. I would also just mention that the discussion about state wildlife areas and some of the concerns dates back to January. That was when Regional Manager Ackerman first teed up the topic, and so the rulemaking piece was last month, but it's something the commission had heard about previously.
Thanks, Katie. And then additional staff response to a couple of Sally's comments. Lauren Truitt, I think, did you have response?
Thank you, Commissioner. I didn't have my hand up, but I can certainly address some of the concerns of from the public process. In addition to what Katie outlined, we also put out press releases and engage our media partners to make sure that we get as broad of coverage on these meetings and the topics being covered as possible. I think there's some of my colleagues, Southeast Region Manager, dive into some of the issues as well as the director, but these properties are purchased and maintained through hunting and angling dollars. And so it is also a primary purpose of the properties that was being voiced as a concern to us, which really brought it to the commission. So I also see that the director is off mute if he wants to add into any of the comments being made.
Thanks, Lauren. Let's go to Director Prenzlow.
Chairwoman Zimmerman, Director Prenzlow, so I will add to that. So I did have a conversation with the federal aid coordinator out of Denver for the all Western states on federal aid to talk about other alternatives, but the short answer is that these properties, whether purchased with federal aid or with not, they were purchased with licensed dollars, hunting and fishing dollars. So they were not purchased by other dollars than that. They were not And so we allow other uses, but those other uses cannot be detrimental to the primary purpose. But no current way with a federal aid property is possible currently that does not, they call it program income. It's a complicated issue, but they're purchased for single use, and to charge somebody a different fee other than a hunting and fishing license complicates that. So I understand Ms. Sharp's question that she doesn't want to buy a fishing license or a hunting license. In the short run, there's only two options: either purchase a hunting and fishing license to access that property, or don't access that property. Right now, other funds or fees that we could create do not go to maintain those. So that's something we are looking at, a possibility, but it is really complicated with federal aid. So I'll just, at that point, if you want to use a property and we think it's not detrimental to use, the only way you're going to pay for the maintenance of that property is buying a hunting or fishing license. Obviously, you can choose not to do that.
Thank you, Director Prenzlau. I'm glad to hear that it's something we might be able to consider. You know, obviously a lot of other hurdles to navigate. Commissioner Adams.
Yes, hello. You know, again, I want to offer my apologies, Sally Sharp. I did vote yes to that, and I have received several emails just asking me about that decision, and then it really, again, hindsight is always 20/20, and it brought up a couple of issues. It reminded me of our goal around financial sustainability, and how we can create more pathways for people who use state parks, not for hunting and fishing, but for hiking or bird watching as a budding birder. And so, you know, again, you know, my wondering is, how can we continue to use that lever as an opportunity to build the coffer and be more inclusive of everybody's dollar. I'm not just going to take hunting and fishing dollars. I'm also going to take those who want to do birding, et cetera. And again, I also am very mindful about the Herculean efforts around the braided funding, et cetera. But if this agency has taught me anything in my short tenure, it is this agency is well equipped with handling complex issues in a graceful and responsive way, in a thoughtful way. And so I really encourage us to think about how we can create multiple pathways, again, responsive of the impact it may have on wildlife. So that's one piece. The other piece is, again, around the communication campaign. How can we strengthen our efforts so that the public really understand the impact, again, specific to hiking and non-consumptive use? I really just don't think that people can wrap their head around how impactful even that day trip is out into some of our wildlife areas. And so how we can be more responsive and supportive of their learning so that they can be more responsible users. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Garcia.
Commissioner Adams, you were referring to state parks. We're not talking about state parks. We're talking about state wildlife areas.
Oh, I know. I know what we were talking about. I was being specific to wildlife areas, and I was saying that the issues that we're facing here in the state parks is something that, again, we can see and create a potential additional funding stream on our wildlife preserve. So again, wanting to clarify that I was talking about the wildlife reserves. And again, I also said in my comments to clarify that I was also wanting to be very mindful of any impacts that this additional traffic could have. So there may be some different restrictions that happen to ensure that those, as you mentioned, and I've heard other hunters mention as I'm merging into this space so graciously, and appreciate the welcome that the hunting community has had, particularly the backcountry hunters and anglers. But again, I just want to make sure that we are being inclusive, not only to our hunting and fishing people, but also to those that want to partake. And again, I want to be very clear about being mindful of the potential impact this additional traffic could have. But I also want to be mindful of, you know, if we wanted to do hunting licenses or fishing licenses, you know, a fishing license specifically, there aren't really any limitations. So going back to the comments about crowding, that would be a whole other conversation. So again, wanted to clarify that. But, you know, looking forward to your comments as well. You're all, you know, Commissioner Garcia, always bringing thoughtful questions to the table, and I always learn through those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Sally Sharp, did you want to go ahead and say something?
Yes, and if I can be clear, we would actually, Great Old Broads would be happy to pay some sort of a fee that was a non-conceptive use fee that's distinct from a hunting or fishing license. So having some sort of wildlife area use license or parking fee or something like that, because we realize that, you know, non-consumptive use is still making an impact and we need to pay for that impact. And that would be totally acceptable. It's just the idea of buying a hunting or fishing license when you're not hunting and fishing is not really acceptable.
Absolutely. And again, we know that those fees are not, you know, even our park fees, which is why I brought that up, are not covering the costs of maintaining and building on our parks. And so this is an existing problem that is now being extended to wildlife preserves. So I appreciate that clarification. And again, you know, this is again going back to that communication campaign around how our parks and wildlife areas are financed. I don't think the public really understands how heavily our budget relies on hunting and fishing. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like we've got Director Prenslow and then potentially Region Manager Ackerman.
Yeah, and I'll just do a little clarification. So I appreciate the olive branch, Ms. Sharp. We have lots of different properties, but federal aid properties, this is not a no for me. I'm trying to explain it to you. Federal aid properties were purchased with hunting and fishing dollars very specifically, and they are primarily used for that. So we cannot, because of our federal partners, just decide to create another license, whatever the fee is, and apply it to that property, because our federal aid dollars will be deducted by that, because that you did not, that group or groups of choosing or wanting to use that property were not the purchasers, and that was not the purpose of that property for what it was purchased. So that is why it's not us trying to be contrarian. It complicates that issue, and it's not, we have a partner in there, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they in federal aid, and they have very specific rules about program income and diversion. And so we have other properties that's not, it's less complicated than that. I think we can talk about some of those, but currently the only way to pay and not have it detrimental to our budget is a hunting or fishing license, because that was the primary purpose.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks everyone for the discussion. Any other comments? Brett, did you want to make a comment?
Just
I'm okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Sally, did you want to make another comment?
Oh, just that we realize that this is a really complex issue, and we're willing to work with, we're willing to collaborate with CPW to find a creative solution.
Great, thank you so much. Good discussion, everyone. We are going to move on to the next public comment. Bob Randall. Katie, if you can get, there we go, I can see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thanks for the chance to address you today. I want to first take just a minute to recognize Chair Zimmerman and Commissioners Bray and Vigil here in the waning hour of this meeting. It was a privilege serving with you during my time on the commission, and I have always appreciated your dedication to the commission and to the agency and to your service to the people of Colorado. So I hope our paths cross again and often as we go forward. So thank you so much. I came before you all in January of this year to talk about the rulemaking proceeding that was just getting underway at the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, the COGCC, to implement Senate Bill 19-181. I'm representing a coalition of wildlife and hunting and angling groups in that proceeding. So Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, the Colorado Wildlife Federation, the National Wildlife Federation, and Colorado Trout Unlimited. And we've been working to ensure that wildlife protection was included in that rulemaking proceeding. In January, when I was with you all, I offered to keep you updated on that effort. So that's why I'm here today. Since that meeting, we've continued to talk to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, COGCC, and DNR team on regulatory approaches and priority areas for wildlife protection when it comes to oil and gas permitting. We were very pleased last month when the COGCC released a straw dog for that agency's wildlife rules, the 1200 series, that address several areas that are important to us, including protection of high priority habitat, including no ground disturbance areas near especially sensitive wildlife habitats like nests or leks or some streams, consultation with parks and wildlife officials where its expertise is needed to protect wildlife from oil and gas impacts, implementation of best practices for wildlife protection, including density triggers and compensatory mitigation to address wildlife impacts that can't be avoided or sufficiently minimized. And so really, I'm just here to thank Director Prenslow, Southeast Region Manager Brett Ackerman, Southwest Energy Liaison John Holst, and the entire CPW team who've really stepped up and worked hard to ensure that wildlife protection is included in this historic rulemaking underway at the COGCC. We look forward to continuing to work with CPW through the rulemaking this summer to ensure that the Oil and Gas Commission adopts robust rules for wildlife protection as required by Senate Bill 181. So again, thanks for the time here this morning. It's great to see everyone, even in your tiny little windows. And I'm happy to take any questions or otherwise let you all get on with your day.
Thank you, Bob. It's always great to see you, and thank you for everything you brought to the table during your time at DNR as well. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Any commissioner staff response to Bob's comments? Commissioner Garcia.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Bob. Good to see you. As you know, Bob, well, first, thank you for all your work you're doing on this. As you know, our Headwaters chapter of Trout Unlimited has been supporting your efforts in a big way. If there's anything that I can do individually to help, just feel free to reach out to me. You know my contact. So thank you again.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Director Prenslow.
Director Prenslow, Bob, thanks again for coming. I appreciate your help. I appreciate the copy of your email so we can digest the detail that you've got. And so I know staff, specifically Brett Ackerman and John Holst, et cetera, but all of our regional staff are looking at that, and our biological staff to make sure that we're covered as best we can be. And as you well know, it's obviously not our process. We are the wildlife experts. Never mind hearing from other entities on how to do a better job. So I just want to thank for that.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Director. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Bob.
Thanks, you all.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Okay. Katie, thank you again for helping organize public comment. Hopefully your July meeting, you guys can do this in person. Fingers crossed, masks and all. Let's go to agenda item 25. This is a resolution regarding support for secure, long-term and dedicated funding for land and water conservation, wildlife management, parks and outdoor recreation. And this is kind of a, we chose to make it more general and not call out the specific federal bills just in case names get changed or amendments get tacked on. So we support the context and the intention, but didn't call out actual numbers and names in case numbers are changed. But that resolution, staff, thank you for drafting that. And any discussion around it, it is an action item. So if there's any discussion, please give me a hand raise. Okay, so I will call out, is there a motion to approve resolution 20-01?
So moved.
Commissioner Schaefer, a second.
Second.
Was that Eden? Was that Commissioner Barty? I couldn't tell who that was. Okay. It was like on off. Okay. Sorry, Commissioner Adams, what?
I'm sorry, what's the title of the resolution?
Yeah, so this is Resolution 20-01, and this is regarding support for secure, long-term, and dedicated funding for the land and water conservation for wildlife management, parks, and outdoor recreation. So this is specific to some of the things that are going on at the federal level with regard to Outdoors Act and
sorry,
Recovering America's Wildlife.
Didn't catch the number. Thank you.
Fair, no, fair. And this is we've talked about in the past, there's been governor's office resolutions, and this is actually a CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission resolution. So a little bit different. Okay, any other discussion around this? Staff, thank you again for drafting. It's very well done. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We even had dogs in the background saying aye, so it must mean it's a very positive thing. All right, our last agenda item 26, election of 2020-2021 commission offices. We did, if you recall at the last meeting, request nominations to go through Laura, and Laura received a slate here that's listed. I don't think it's listed. I think I just have it listed. So the slate we received would be chairman would be Commissioner McDaniel, vice chair would be Commissioner Hauser, secretary would be Commissioner Haskett. And that's the nomination we received. So I'm looking for, looks like maybe there's discussion. Commissioner Garcia.
I move to move forward the slate as proposed.
Okay, I'll take a second, and then I think we do have additional discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Schaefer. I was looking at Commissioner Blecka's name because I know that she had wanted to.
But I was trying to unmute it. I struggled. I'm sorry.
Well, thanks for trying. When we're in person, I swear it's going to be great. Commissioner Bray, do we have, I think, discussion?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. First, I want to make a couple of comments since this is kind of the end of the day. Number one, I want to congratulate Michelle on her past year as chairman. She's done a great job.
Thank you.
And we're going to miss you. I'm going to miss all of you. I want to personally thank all the kind comments that have come our way regarding our pending departure. A special shout out to Dan Gates and his constituents for coming online and doing all that. That's pretty special. So, but again, thank you to all. And I wholeheartedly support the nominations going forward for next year's officers.
Thank you, Commissioner Bray. Any other discussion before we take the vote? Okay. Well, I think that was pretty, pretty clear. So I think we can just do a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner McDaniel, I wish I had a gavel that I could, sentimentally pass along to you. So when we have this in-person celebration that we keep referencing, we'll have to relive the moment.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I'll do my best. I won't do as well as you, but I'll do my best.
Well, I had to follow Commissioner Howard, so at least I took the bar that was way up here and I brought it way down. So I think you're going to be just fine.
And I do look forward to us meeting in person, and I think it was Luke's comment, have a cold one and both toast and roast all of you. You and Jim and Robert have made a real impact in my life, so can't wait to see you all.
Sounds great. Okay. Well, with that, I don't have anything else. Anyone have anything else before we adjourn the meeting?
If I could, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead,
Commissioner.
Commissioner. Yep, please go ahead.
I only wanted to bring up that, for the next meeting, I know that Director Prinsloo, and I don't know if he wanted to say any words about it, we're trying to make this, I know he's trying to make this that we can actually see ourselves face to face as an option. Obviously, those who want to participate virtually could still continue to do so. if they had any, reservations about their own safety or health. So anyway, trying to make it happen. Hopefully it will. I don't know what you want to add there, Dan.
Well, new chairman, thanks to congratulations to the new slate for one. So I'd like to say thanks. I'm looking forward to that. I really do appreciate Michelle. As I talked yesterday about Commissioner Zimmerman, we have a fantastic history, but I got to spend a lot of time in this interesting year. Mostly it's my new year and her first year as Madam Chairwoman, and then we get COVID and we get all this things we get to talk a lot more about. So one, I just want to say thanks for that. Secondly, as we transition, congrats to the new slate, Chairman McDaniel. I would like to sit and talk about with you and Jeff Versteeg, and I think we should do our best to try and pull off an in-person and a public meeting at some level. And I would even offer potentially that if Durango is too restrictive, we'll go outside of Durango or somewhere in the Southwest. So I think as the end of this meeting, we'll start to toe in on that specific subject. I have no angst if there's commissioners and or staff. We're talking about a smaller, very much smaller footprint if we can do it in July. And so it would be no penalty whatsoever to call in if staff or commission either didn't feel comfortable about that or just aren't quite ready to pull that off in person. So we'll make sure if we get that done that we have the accommodations to do both, potentially in person and a call in. So we would obviously talk about how the public would interact. I could envision a separate room for some amount of public and that they could come in individually in front of face-to-face to the commission, I think, which is important to our publics to be able to interact with the commission. We've heard a lot about that. So we're going to start thinking about that. Just want to let you know if you have any thoughts on that, please feel free, obviously, to call me or Jeff Versteeg or Chairman McDaniel. So that's it on that subject.
Thanks, Dan. Chairman McDaniel, you've got a couple of hands up.
I didn't know it was turned over to me already, Michelle. I was expecting you to...
I didn't either, but now it is.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. I didn't get an opportunity yesterday, and I did want to say thank you and hopefully not goodbye, but thank you to Chair Zimmerman. You've done an amazing job, and I really appreciate you reaching out to us individually. The work you do is a lot more than the rest of us do, and you've done a great job, so thank you. For Commissioner Bray and Vigil, I never realized until I came on this commission the importance of agriculture in the wildlife of Colorado. I knew it, but I didn't really understand the depth of it. And you too have not only represented agriculture, but represented all of the natural resources and all of the wildlife and hunting and fishing and everything that we stand for in Colorado. And for the three of you, good luck, Governor. When you talk about raising the bar, Chair Zimmerman, the three of you are going to be next to impossible. You can't be replaced. And so good luck to the governor in his appointments. But you're going to be sorely missed from this commission. And I hope not missed, because I hope you continue to visit with us and me personally. And then I want to do one final last shout out. And Director Prinsloo did it quite a bit yesterday, but to our law enforcement people within Parks and Wildlife, and for the great work that they're doing in these troubled times. And I want to especially thank Assistant Director Dugan for all of the work that she does with our law enforcement personnel and the work that she does behind the scenes with things like Senate Bill 2217. A huge thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Hauser?
Thanks. I'll be quick because I have an 11:30, so probably others do too. Congratulations to Commissioner McDaniel. Thanks obviously to the outgoing board. I just wanted to maybe underscore or second the notion of trying, if we can, to be creative, to be together in July, somewhere in the Southwest, at Durango, if we can make that happen. I also wanted to just maybe put out there an opportunity, assuming we have 3 new commissioners, that it's really an opportunity. I'm not sure we did a particularly great job when the last group came on, and it's hard. I think it's hard when that occurs. So that kind of norming, storming opportunity to do some grounding and put us all together kind of on a similar path, not just for sort of meeting protocols, but how do we want to relate to each other, and how do we want to make our meetings the most effective. So I'm putting that on Chairman McDaniel, but I'm also volunteering to help with that if there's general sentiment that there would be interest in that. And I'm sorry, I'm staying my piece and then I have to drop off. So thanks to everybody for a great meeting. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you,
Hauser.
Carrie.
I know Carrie's dropped off, but that's an excellent idea. The idea of somehow, and I also heard that from Dan Gates, but somehow to do an immersion for our new commissioners on both the mission and strategic goals of CBW, as well as how to become an effective commissioner and work with everyone so we can accomplish our goals. Next, Commissioner Adams.
Hey, Commissioner McDaniels, and you may recall I raised this issue a few months ago when I proposed having some kind of governance or onboarding committee where we could gather these materials and revisit the presentations, and there is a curriculum in place. Again, that curriculum is primarily when it talks about the history of hunting, et cetera, in Colorado, settler based. And so there is a rich opportunity again for us to revisit that, strengthen that so that it's inclusive of all Coloradans' contributions, as well as just consolidating. The iPad has a ton of resources on it, but it's very challenging to access them when you need them. So I certainly am happy to help to support the onboarding efforts and revisioning and updating our curriculum around that to support our new commissioners as they onboard. And also want to thank outgoing Chairwoman Zimmerman for her support and on my own onboarding. As I mentioned, I would say 98% of my experience has been overwhelmingly positive, but that percent has been devastating and very challenging. So I've appreciated the partnership, the support. Also, Commissioner Bray was the first person I got to sit next to. It was very intimidating, and he was absolutely so welcoming. And I write little notes. He would write back, okay, this is what they're talking about. And I just, it was very intimidating coming into a room, being the only Black person in it, with a whole bunch of people of guns, and to have that welcoming, to know that that I can be there, that I should be there, that I have a right to be there, and to be welcome in such a way was just very moving to me, and I will never, ever forget that. And Commissioner Vigil, the expertise you bring to the table, it is just, the bar is so high as far as reading every single word, and also then following up with staff and stakeholders. You have set a precedent that I hope one day that I can model in my own role as a commissioner. So thank you for paving such a strong path for us to build on, and know that those legacies will continue to live on. And again, we hope to see you in other ways outside of this commission, and continuing to serve in the ways that are appropriate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Adams. I do remember your comments about how we could better bring new commissioners on, and I'll follow that up with Director Prinsloo as we get our 3 new commissioners, perhaps as soon as the next meeting. Commissioner Vigil.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Adams, for the kind words. And I want to thank all of you. I really enjoyed working with all of you. I do want to welcome you all to Trinidad next year for an in-person meeting. If that's possible and that's the wish of the commission, it'd be great to see you in Trinidad, because then the new park will be up and running, hopefully. So sayonara.
Thank you, Commissioner Vihil. We'll see if we can make that happen. Be great to come down there in the first year of the opening of the new park, whatever name it turns out to be, as a way for us to celebrate that occasion. With that in mind, are there any final comments or any questions from any of the commissioners? Hearing or seeing none, we'll move to adjourn the meeting and wish everyone a very successful and happy and healthy weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.